Chapter 87. I shall reach the peak of the 13th level of qi condensation. Meng Hao, Patriarch Reliance, ground his teeth. He felt grieved and deeply regretful. If he'd known, he would have said nicer things. How could he have imagined Meng Hao's cruelty? Forget the cruelty, the cosmos bag. Forget that, the 10th level of qi condensation. The scene unfolding before him made him want to weep, but he had no tears. He gnashed his teeth as deeper trepidation filled his heart. He remembered the demon sealing Jade's requirements. Only someone who'd reached the 13th level of qi condensation could use it. When the old bastard said that, his heart filled with contempt. He believed he could prevent the demon sealing sect's legacy from continuing. But seeing Meng Hao pass into the 11th level, his trembling heart filled with anxiety. Unfortunately, he could only grit his teeth and absorb as much spiritual energy as possible. He needed more than Meng Hao and needed it faster. He needed the Feng Shui compass to be completely repaired and prevent Meng Hao from advancing further. The spiritual energy flowing into the ground and then into the Feng Shui compass was bright red, as if sucking something out of the earth itself. Damn it, Meng Hao, I gave you a spirit stone and didn't dispel your poison. Haven't you gone far enough? I'm still your patriarch. Patriarch Reliance felt profoundly wronged. Meng Hao felt a roaring sound fill his body. As 20% of the lamp's spiritual energy flowed into him, his body trembled and changed. His core C grew larger, his qi passageways thickened. A bang rang out in his head as he felt the sensation of breaking through to another level. The 11th level of qi condensation. His core C spread out to fill his entire body. This type of core C really was impossible for someone of the qi condensation stage. Its majesty ensured endless future growth and power. Breaking through to foundation establishment would be harder, but if he succeeded, he'd be twice as powerful as peers. The 11th level of qi condensation does not refine the body, but the core C. His core C filled Meng Hao's body with a thunderous sound. Boundless spiritual energy filled him. Waves of the core C crashed and churned endlessly. Meng Hao opened his eyes and took a deep breath that thundered like a clap. He stood, eyes gleaming with determination, and took 3 steps forward. He stood beside the lamps, close enough to touch them. He was absorbing 30% of their spiritual energy. 30% might not sound like a lot, but it would be impossible for Meng Hao were it not for the abilities of the 10th level of qi condensation. That was the stage of qi condensation that could steal good fortune from the heavens after all. Meng Hao, aren't you finished yet? Patriarch Reliance watched, his anxiety growing even deeper. If Meng Hao reached the 12th level, he would be only 1 step away from being able to use the demon sealing Jade. Many thanks for your help, Patriarch, said Meng Hao. I'll be finished soon. He closed his eyes and absorbed more spiritual energy. His body shook as he stepped into the 12th level of qi condensation. Since ancient times, no one had ever entered the 12th level of qi condensation. The instant he did so, Meng Hao felt a severe pain in his mind. His spiritual sense didn't go anywhere, but he felt as if his mind were being split in two. Now he felt something like a stream within his mind. This was the sea of perception. In modern times, cultivators who broke through from qi condensation into foundation establishment formed a sea of perception from nothing. Usually it wasn't large, not because of latent talent, but because of the method used. The larger the sea of perception, the more power it wielded, and the more boundless the cultivator's spiritual sense. In ancient times, cultivators preferred to break through to foundation establishment in the 12th level of qi condensation. This is because the 12th level is when the sea of perception opens up. By practicing cultivation in this fashion, the sea of perception would be far more powerful than others of the foundation establishment stage. In the modern cultivation world, Meng Hao was the first cultivator to ever enter the 12th level of qi condensation. If news of this spread, it would shake the entire cultivation world. Patriarch Reliance was shaken. He stared dumbly as Meng Hao's 9th level of qi condensation rose to the 12th. He was speechless. In ancient times, he muttered, legend said the 13th level completed the great circle of qi condensation. Even then it was rare. It was said the 13th level related to heaven's good fortune and could change a cultivator's latent talent. Even a slight change defied the heavens, since latent talent comes from heaven itself. I can't remember when the demon sealing sect bastards boasted I was lucky, but this kid surpasses me. He's too lucky. How could I have provoked this? As Patriarch Reliance spoke, Meng Hao opened his eyes, shining with profound light. He felt splitting pain in his head, but within it, he sensed unprecedented clarity. The world seemed different when he looked at it, although he couldn't quite tell which particular things weren't the same. It was as if everything now shone with radiances that he had never noticed before. At this time, the massive gravitational power seemed on the verge of dissipating, as if his body knew that he was reaching his absorption limit. Soon, the spiritual energy he absorbed dropped from 30% to 20, then to 10. This caused Meng Hao to frown. His cultivation base hadn't reached its peak. He could sense another layer beyond. He could feel the great circle of qi condensation. It was a powerful feeling, but as the gravitational power grew weaker and weaker, it seemed as though that next level would be forever closed off to him. Haha, as I said, laughed Patriarch Reliance. The 13th level was rare even in ancient times, barely legend. The 12th level is the limit. Meng Hao, don't try further, back away. Don't interfere with my master plan. When I escape, I'll mop the floor with you. You need a spanking. Though Meng Hao had absorbed some spiritual energy, not much was gone. Enough remained for Patriarch Reliance's plan. And without the 13th level, Meng Hao lacked the latent talent to use the demon sealing Jade. His luck is that amazing after all, said Patriarch Reliance complacently. But Meng Hao's eyes flickered. Stubborn by nature, now that he'd glimpsed the next level beyond the 12th, he'd do everything to break through. The gravitational power is weakening. How can I continue? Meng Hao's mind raced through possibilities until his eyes glittered. He smacked his bag of holding and the two wooden swords whistled out. He gritted his teeth and sent one flying at himself. Patriarch Reliance watched in astonishment as the sword slashed Meng Hao, over 10 gaping wounds opening across his body. Meng Hao clenched his jaw as the sword slashed bloody marks. His eyes shone with determination. As blood splashed from the wounds, spiritual power seeped from his body. This was exactly what he wanted. As spiritual power leaked from his body, the gravitational force trembled, then grew stronger. Meng Hao's resolve hardened. He sent both swords flying around him, slashing his body with wound after wound. Nearly 100 cuts covered his flesh. The wounds sent the physical power of his body into action, and at the same time caused the gravitational power within him to grow more and more powerful. Patriarch Reliance was dumbstruck. He could never have imagined Meng Hao would do this. The bloody wounds and determination in Meng Hao's eyes showed his ruthlessness. If he could treat himself this cruelly, how would he treat others? The more wounds that covered him, the stronger the gravitational force became. The amount of spiritual energy he siphoned from the lamps jumped from 10% to 40%. And yet, even though the spiritual energy poured into his body, he couldn't break through to that next level. After some time, Meng Hao laughed coldly and raised his right hand. One wooden sword whistled toward his chest, stabbing through him in a fountain of blood. Blood sprayed from his mouth. Instantly, spiritual power dropped by a huge percentage, causing the gravitational force to climb higher. By now, he was absorbing 50% of the spiritual energy coming from the 7 oil lamps. A booming sound rang out. Boundless spiritual energy filled Meng Hao as he launched everything at the barrier between levels. Blood sprayed from his mouth as the wooden sword slashed through his body again. Spiritual energy from the 7 lamps surged. Meng Hao now drew 70%. It was in this way that Meng Hao launched his attack from the 12th level of qi condensation into the 13th. Time passed. More wounds covered his body. Meng Hao's ruthlessness made flesh. His body trembled and vision blurred. He now absorbed 90% of the spiritual energy from the lamps, bathing in thick, pure spiritual energy. You're going to kill yourself. Patriarch Reliance watched, breathing agitated. Meng Hao's stubbornness left him reeling. I will become powerful. There's no reason. I must become powerful. Meng Hao began to lose consciousness, but his stubbornness wouldn't allow him. Despite his current condition, he wouldn't even think of giving up. He continued to murmur to himself that he must become powerful. Meng Hao must break through to the 13th level of qi condensation. This is his Tao. Patriarch Reliance took a deep breath, finally understanding. This chapter was sponsored by Patrick Nguyen, Nur Arif, Saipakalapati, Subtle Inc., and Hein Hodgeberg. Chapter 88, Lord Revelation's True Self. Boom! The 2 wooden swords stabbed through Meng Hao's body simultaneously, showers of blood flying out. His life's flame grew dimmer. The gravitational force had grown to an unprecedented height, so strong it seemed it might suck in everything around him. No obstacle, no danger could block his path to becoming a powerful expert. The gravitational force seemed to be affecting Meng Hao's stupor. His mind expanded into boundlessness. Patriarch Reliance looked at him and murmured, "This is stealing good fortune from the heavens." Meng Hao's desire to be powerful had fused with his cultivation base, the stubbornness of the 13th level, to steal from the heavens and defy them, changing his life force. A thunderous boom sounded as the full spectrum of spiritual energy from the 7 lamps poured into Meng Hao, becoming his blade to attack and break through the level gap. It was the power of 6 core formation cultivators and 1 nascent soul cultivator, but the truest part was his stubborn desire to be powerful. This desire aligned with the 13th level of qi condensation, rejected by the heavens. This forged his 13th level. Amidst the roaring, the level gap disintegrated. The instant it did, Meng Hao, bathed as he was in inexhaustible spiritual energy, felt his cultivation base soaring up from the 12th level to the 13th level. He had now become the first cultivator since ancient times to complete the great circle of qi condensation. In that instant, Meng Hao's latent talent changed silently. Even he was only vaguely aware of it. If an outsider examined him now, they'd see his latent talent was no longer average. While not chosen, it had risen considerably. From time immemorial, no one had ever been able to change their own latent talent. No heavenly material or earthly treasure had the power to change the destiny appointed by the heavens. And yet today, Meng Hao had done just that. He was the first person since ancient times to complete the great circle of qi condensation, as well as the first person to change his latent talent. This was a new beginning, a fresh start on the path to becoming a powerful expert. The instant he completed the great circle of qi condensation, all his wounds healed. Immersed in spiritual energy, his body experienced rebirth. You could even say that Meng Hao himself had been reborn anew. After the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, Meng Hao's eyes flashed open. The surrounding spiritual energy surged down into the earth again. Now that he'd completed the great circle of qi condensation, the gravitational force was completely gone. Having witnessed Meng Hao's transformation with his own eyes, Patriarch Reliance was left speechless. More astonishing still, after opening his eyes, Meng Hao reached out and picked up one of the 7 lamps, the one containing Lord Revelation's nascent soul. He turned and transformed into a beam of light as he shot toward the vortex exit. "Aren't you afraid of getting burned to death?" Patriarch Reliance stared in a daze, then cursed as Meng Hao disappeared through the vortex. "You little bastard, you're shameless. You demon-sealing sect people are all bastards. Shameless." He paced back and forth furiously, letting out a torrent of howls. As soon as Meng Hao left through the vortex, the Immortal's cave began to seal up behind him. Only a rapidly closing fissure remained, from which emanated the stench of death. Within the southern domain outside the state of Zhao was the state of Revelation. Its land resembled the state of Zhao's, but its people were bizarre. Whereas the state of Zhao revered the eastern lands, Revelation did not. It paid obeisance to the mysteries of the heavens instead, so all sects there were branches of the Revelation sect. In the mysterious eastern regions were 3 mountain ranges winding like twisting dragons. One peak resembled 2 dragon heads locked in combat, the pinnacle of Revelation. Mist curled around it, and atop it sat a bell. Once yearly, the bell tolled, its echoes reverberating for 3 days. Beneath the bell was a forest of ornate buildings. This was none other than the most powerful sect in the nation, the Revelation sect. Atop the main gate sat an old cultivator in black robes, his demeanor transcendent. For the Revelation sect disciples, it had been very long since he'd sat in meditation there. No matter wind nor rain, no matter how many years passed, he sat like a rock, eternally still. Many disciples didn't know who he was. Clearly an elder sitting beneath the Revelation bell, yet whenever powerful sect experts looked at him, their eyes filled with veneration. The Revelation sect was filled with the uninterrupted sound of disciples chanting scriptures. The sound formed an invisible force that congealed at the mountain's top, where a vortex slowly sucked in the power of the chanting. This was something that only cultivators could see. The chanting of the Revelation sect disciples rose up and then merged into the Revelation bell. In fact, the bell seemed to be sucking in, not just the chanting of the cultivators, but the prayers of everyone in the entire nation. The old man who'd sat under the bell seemingly for eternity began to tremble and coughed up blood. Suddenly the bell tolled, its sound echoing through the entire state of Revelation. The disciples within the Revelation sect were shocked. The sect elders and powerful experts instantly opened their eyes from meditation. One by one, they turned into prismatic beams which shot toward the Revelation bell. When they arrived, they saw the black-robed old man sitting there, his eyes wide open. "Greetings, Patriarch." Patriarch, are you in good health? Dozens of cultivators surrounded him, bowing respectfully with clasped hands. The black-robed old man's eyes flashed with lightning. His left pupil blazed intensely like the sun. His right exuded darkness like a crescent moon. One look and you'd never forget him. When he opened his eyes, it seemed his forehead split and another eye appeared, an eye invisible to others, showing only a blood-red glow. Storm clouds gathered above him as a fierce wind whipped about. Patriarch Reliance, you destroyed my clone and rejected my good intentions. You're finished. I'm not the only one with tricks. What do you have, your trifling spirit severing? You dare arouse the wrath of the dawn immortal. His face grim, he slapped the ground. The mountain trembled, ripples shaking it and sending cultivators retreating in shock. As the mountain shook, the revelation bell sounded out and rose into the air. Surrounding it were countless magical symbols flying and twisting brightly, their glow nearly blinding, spreading throughout the state of revelation. The demonic forces descend, exactly as our ancestors divined. A calamity for heaven and earth, but also revelation's chance to rise. I shall take back my clone's nascent soul, then Patriarch Reliance will see if he still dares be arrogant. This black-robed man was Lord Revelation himself. His clone had been consumed by Patriarch Reliance. This was his true self. As he spoke, he stood and flew skyward. He snatched up the revelation bell and transformed into a multicolored rainbow, shooting toward the state of Zhao with killing intent. Meanwhile, in the state of Zhao, a buzzing sound echoed through the cold wind sect's ancestral hall. The disciple on duty pushed open the door with a strange look. Inside, his body shook and astonishment filled his face. Life slips of various sect cultivators were neatly displayed. Suddenly, those of the core formation priest and elder Taisheng began to crack and crumble. This meant that the core formation priest and elder Taisheng had died. The foundation establishment elder's slips fell apart. The disciple guarding the hall shook, disbelief filling his face. The core formation priest had left a foundation establishment elder to guard the sect. When that man learned the news, his face paled and he ordered silence. He knew this was catastrophe. Core formation experts killed meant sect downfall. Nearly all foundation establishment cultivators wiped out would only hasten it. What happened in Patriarch Reliance's meditation zone? The elder gathered chi condensation disciples and sent them toward the Reliance sect. Then, trying to calm himself, he took hold of a special horn that hadn't sounded in hundreds of years, the horn of the Tao. Sounding it would awaken the sect's Tao reserves. Every clan and sect had Tao reserves, passed down through generations. For the three great sects, these generally consisted of a patriarch who failed to reach nascent soul but postponed death through suspended animation in a pseudo-nascent soul state. Only they could suppress the panic of impending catastrophe. When the horn sounded in the cold wind sect, it reached an old withered man in a secret immortal's cave. He looked dead, his body barely skin and bones. But his eyes opened when he heard the call. His spiritual sense instantly roared out, enveloping the cold wind sect. When it entered the foundation establishment cultivator's body, he trembled as pain filled his face. A powerful feeling seemed to obliterate him, spiritual sense rifling through his memories. After a while, the spiritual sense departed. The foundation establishment cultivator fell, panting, his body limp and face pale. Only his foundation establishment stage saved him from the memory search. A profound voice echoed through the sect. Take my freezing jade and seal the mountains around the Reliance sect. Let no one leave. I'll wake in a few hours. Search for clues meanwhile. The cultivator struggled to his feet and clasped his fists in a deep bow. An ice-cold piece of blue jade flew into his hand. Similar scenes played out in the Winding Stream sect and the Upright Evening sect. When the life slips belonging to their priests and elders crumbled, they all used their sect's Tao reserves. As of this moment, the cultivation world of the state of Zhao had been thrown into an uproar. Chapter 89, Guiding Trirane 1. In the original release of this chapter, Urgen challenged the audience to figure out the meaning of Guiding Trirane's name. There was much debate about it. Here is the breakdown of her name. Chinese characters. Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter. Transliteration. Gu Yiding Sanyu. Characters. Chinese letter Gu ancient, old. Chinese letter Yi second, the second of the heavenly stems, bent, winding. Chinese letter Ding surname, man, fourth of the heavenly stems. Chinese letter San 3. Chinese letter Yu reign. Patriarch Reliance sat in his sealed meditation zone, fury rising to the heavens. He cursed continuously in anger and pain. Regarding Meng Hao, he felt helpless. After all, the boy was the Reliance sect's only heir. That little bastard is too ruthless. I'm his patriarch. First he steals half my treasures, takes my demon-sealing Jade, robs me of spiritual energy, then shamelessly pillages a demonic lamp. Nearly breathless from cursing. When he thought of the ancient demonic lamp, he suddenly looked worried. So I didn't dispel the poison, true. But that doesn't mean you can act this way. An upright person should be reasonable. When I stole treasures, I discussed it with them first. He reached the 13th level of chi condensation. Years ago, those bastards said the demon-sealing Jade couldn't be taken by someone below that level. I thought they were just being mysterious and was happy. Obviously, they tricked me. If it couldn't be taken, even if my plan worked, I couldn't break the seal. But he reached it and took it. I can feel the seal weakening. I'm missing one lamp, which reduces my chances, but the seal's been unstable for years anyway. Now it shows even more weakness. Why do demon-sealing sect cultivators always deceive me? Those bastards did it years ago, the little bastard does it now. Patriarch Reliance ground his teeth, but remembering Meng Hao throwing his words back at him, then thinking of his stubbornness in reaching the 13th level, he couldn't help but sigh. This kid acts like me. I didn't want to be in a bad position. You deceived me, I deceived you. The old demon-sealing sect bastards didn't tell the truth, thinking if they fled I couldn't reach them. True enough, but I changed the name from demon-sealing to Reliance sect. Couldn't deceive them but their descendants. Damn it, if I'd known Meng Hao would reach the 13th level and gain the latent talent to take the demon-sealing Jade, I'd have dispelled his poison immediately. Then he'd never have reached it, but then I'd never opened the seal either. Patriarch Reliance felt torn. Though upset, he could only sigh. Patriarch Reliance had an eccentric personality and wasn't easy to get along with. Meng Hao didn't know this. Before the sect disbanded, no one else knew either. Only people of Patriarch Reliance's generation knew such matters, and mention of him aroused hatred. But eccentric personalities can't be analyzed normally. Though Meng Hao robbed his treasures, stole his spiritual energy, took a lamp, and drove him crazy, Patriarch Reliance felt admiration for him. Ordinary people couldn't understand this. If Meng Hao had silently left, Patriarch Reliance would have forgotten him within years. But his actions left a deep impression. Patriarch Reliance would never forget the complicated, torn feelings he now experienced. Outside the Reliance sect in the state of Zhao, it was warm and sunny. Storm clouds brewed on the horizon. Meng Hao sat cross-legged on his treasured fan, face calm, soaring forward at high speed. He'd lowered his cultivation base to the 9th level. He wouldn't reveal the Great Circle unless necessary. Despite his achievements, the poisons remained undispelled, like a fishbone in his throat. He sat in silent contemplation, figuring how to dispel the poison. I removed one of 4 poisons. Except for the 3-colored pills poison, the others should be easy to dispel. I need to find the dispelling pills fastest. Regarding Patriarch Reliance, Meng Hao's hatred and anger had subsided. He glided along, and soon thunder and lightning filled the sky. Raindrops the size of beans fell. Sheets of rain covered the land, making everything dim and hazy. Rain fell, but the temperature remained hot. The stifling heat made breathing difficult. Only in the rain could he feel coolness. Amidst the heavy rain, Meng Hao stopped gliding and stood atop a mountain. Looking off into the distance, he pushed the rain away. He stood in his own land, separate from the murky world. He looked out at the earth and thought of all his experiences. Completing the Great Circle seemed like a dream. After long thought, he sighed. I wonder how elder sister Sue is doing now, he said softly as her face appeared in his mind. He looked off in the direction he supposed was the center of the southern domain. He raised his right hand, and a jade slip appeared, carved with mountains and rivers, covered with cracks, looking ready to crumble. Patriarch Reliance had called this a good luck charm, found at the bottom of the spirit stone mountain. He looked at it closely, sent spiritual energy into it. No reaction. Muttering, he put it back and pulled out the palm-sized black flag. A spark of energy moved inside it. He blew chi from his cultivation base into it, muttering to himself. This item isn't sealed to Patriarch Reliance, so I can use it. I'll refine it before using its full power. He infused more chi before putting it away. Next, he carefully brought out the burning oil lamp containing a tiny figure sitting cross-legged. When Meng Hao pulled out the nascent soul, streams of spiritual energy roiled out. Flames appeared before his eyes, but he felt no heat. Yet he knew it was powerful. The flame was life force, the nascent soul the fuel. This item will be extremely useful. I can use it as a life-saving treasure. Eager to the extreme, Meng Hao tucked it back into the bag of the cosmos. At last, he pulled out the ancient jade piece, radiating profound ancientness from countless ages. Meng Hao looked at it, heart thumping. He sent spiritual energy into it. 3 characters appeared in his head: demon sealing sect. Mnemonics also appeared, but he couldn't see them clearly. Only the first 3 characters were legible. He poured more spiritual energy into it. A roaring sound filled his head. He stepped back involuntarily and stopped forcing energy into it. Only those who hadn't completed the Great Circle could see just the 3 characters. He could read the first line. Ancient Tao, tenacious desire to seal the heavens, benefaction for all in the mountains. Tao tribulation must come to the 9 mountains and seas. My fate is the Aeon. Meng Hao's body trembled, his vision cleared. Rain fell on him, soaking him. Strange light filled his eyes. He looked down silently at the jade slip. Images appeared in his head, the demonic technique used by Patriarch Reliance, the magic Shangyuan Ziu used to control Mount Daqing's aura. After long contemplation, he still didn't understand. He sat cross-legged and poured more spiritual energy into the jade slip, contemplating its meaning again. After an incense stick's worth of time, the rain came quickly and passed quickly. Meng Hao suddenly opened his eyes. As a child, he'd been smart. Though he failed as a scholar, once in the Reliance sect, he grasped magical techniques quickly without spending much time practicing. This was the first time he had trouble with a mnemonic. It required enlightenment to understand. Without it, it could only be observed from outside, never entered. The words are complicated, their meaning obscure, like looking at flowers in fog or the moon on rippling water. He pondered until a bright look appeared in his eyes. He lifted his head and gazed at the sky, hesitant. Determination finally rose in his eyes. He leaped up, a flying sword appearing beneath his feet as he shot off. If I reach Foundation establishment, I can fly for long periods, much better than this. Wind buffeted his face as he soared. After a while, the sword's momentum faded. Meng Hao dropped and continued running. Time passed slowly. The first time he left these mountains at the 6th level, it took 2 days. Now at the Great Circle, it took about an hour. Soon he emerged and reached the North Sea. 1. Previous related chapters about the North Sea, Chapter 44 and Chapter 66. He stood again on the shore, looking out at the lake. He took a deep breath, face filled with sincerity, and clasped his hands in 2 deep bows. The first bow was for the North Sea's kindness in demonstrating the Tao and helping him break through his bottleneck. The second was for when the North Sea helped him in his battle with Ding Xin, saving his life and causing his rebirth. I've made my promise twice, so I won't say it again. It's imprinted on my heart. He lifted his head, looking toward the lake's center. After some time, he closed his eyes and sat cross-legged to meditate. In his mind, the jade slip's mnemonic appeared. Ancient Tao, tenacious desire to seal the heavens, benefaction for all in the mountains. Tao tribulation must come to the 9 mountains and seas. My fate is the Aeon. Long time passed as the words reverberated in his mind. He still didn't understand them. More time passed as he tried to decipher their meaning. Suddenly, hearty laughter echoed from across the lake. Young sir, do you want to cross the sea? Meng Hao lifted his head and saw a boat approaching. On it was an old man in a woven rush raincoat. Inside was a young girl, 8 or 9 years old with big eyes. When she looked at Meng Hao, an innocent smile appeared. Meng Hao laughed and clasped his hands in a bow to the old man and girl. He leaped onto a flying sword and shot toward them, dropping into the boat. As before, a bottle of alcohol was warming. The young girl took it out and poured a cup for Meng Hao, but didn't hand it to him. She rested her chin on her hands and looked at him. Why did you come back, big brother? She said, her voice pure and clear. Did you come to see Guiding Trirane? Meng Hao stared at her blankly. Guiding Trirane is my name, but you can't tell anybody, okay, big brother. She laughed and winked, looking charming. Meng Hao smiled, cupped his hands in a bow and accepted the cup. The old man laughed as the boat continued toward the lake's center. He looked back at Meng Hao. We haven't seen each other for many days. Young sir, your demeanor is much more refined. Are you crossing to the other shore this time? I'm not here to cross the lake, Meng Hao said lightly, taking a sip. I'm here to clear up some confusion. This chapter sponsored by Audiobook. Chapter 90, The Great Path of Demon Sealing, a concept like a scripture. The old man put down the oar and looked back at Meng Hao. He walked over, laughing, poured himself alcohol and drank. Clear up what confusion? Meng Hao held his cup and softly said, I'm confused about something I read. It said, Ancient Tao, tenacious desire to seal the heavens. Shock covered the old man's face. Blood drained from the girl's. Waves suddenly surged across the North Sea, causing the boat to rock violently. "Stop!" cried the old man. The cup in his hand vanished into a dark mist as he stared at Meng Hao. Meng Hao gaped. "Don't say that again. I can't explain those words to you. Neither can anyone else in heaven or earth. If you truly seek enlightenment, then enter the heart of the sea." He closed his mouth and looked at the young girl. Some time passed, and finally her countenance returned to normal. She gave a slight nod. Meng Hao was silent for a while before asking, "What do you mean by the heart of the sea?" The old man spoke with deep profundity. "Things have been concealed at the bottom of the sea for 1,000 years. That is the heart of the sea. If you seek answers, perhaps examine your own heart." Meng Hao lost himself in thought for a long time. When he finally looked up, his eyes widened in shock. There was no trace of the old man or girl. He was alone on the lake. The boat had vanished. He stared blankly until his vision focused on a distant spot. On the far bank, people lowered a brand new boat into the water. It slowly entered the lake and laughter rang out, surrounded by celebratory cheers. The boat slowly approached the center of the lake. Rowing it was a middle-aged man, accompanied by a woman and a child. Meng Hao watched as, day after day, year after year, he rowed back and forth across the lake. Many years passed and the man grew old. The man's son grew up and took over rowing the boat. Years and years passed. Generations and generations. The boat, once brand new, slowly began to crack and grow old. It began to age. Eventually it grew so dilapidated it couldn't be repaired. Like a life that reached its limit, it couldn't go on. It slowly sank to the lake's bottom. It had lived on the surface and died at the bottom. Its existence was on the lake's waters, accompanying generations of mortals who created it. The lake was its entire life. In its life, the lake was its companion. No one could hear the voice of the lake, but it could. When it sank to the bottom, it died, but was also reborn. It awoke. When it awoke, it saw a young girl standing at the lake's bottom, smiling. "Will you accompany me forever?" "I don't know how long forever is, but in my past life, I heard your voice. Now that I've died, I want to accompany you and have you be part of my next life." At this moment, it understood. It was the boat's spirit. Listening to the lake's voice over countless years had brought it into being. Before dying, its life had been the waters of the lake. After death, its spirit would protect the lake forever, into eternity. It was then that a boat once again appeared on the surface of the lake. Inside the boat was a young girl warming a bottle of alcohol. Together, they floated to and fro across the lake. Meng Hao's mind shook as he saw all this transpire. Everything grew blurry for a moment, then came back into focus. He was once again in the boat. The old man grinned at him, holding his cup. The girl looked up, smiling, her chin resting in her hands. The old man drank. "This is my heart. Do you understand, successor of the demon sealing sect?" Meng Hao was silent. Frustration shined in his eyes. He did not understand. "Don't search too hard for an answer. If you do, it might be false. Perhaps one day you'll find it. Don't give up." The old man looked at Meng Hao solemnly. "Big brother," said the girl, "its aura is beneath your feet. Don't provoke it. Remember the great path of demon sealing." Waves surged in all directions, great tall waves touching the sky. Everything turned dark amid the thunderous roar. The boat sank into the water. Meng Hao didn't leap out. Instead, he closed his eyes. After some time passed, he opened them and found himself sitting cross-legged on the lakeshore. The lake was still. There were no waves and no boat. What just happened was an illusion. The girl and old man hadn't appeared. Everything had occurred in a dream. "Its aura is beneath my feet." Meng Hao's eyes shone with confusion. He looked down. He saw nothing but his shoes. The great path of demon sealing, a concept like a scripture. Meng Hao frowned, unable to comprehend the words. He got to his feet slowly, then clasped his hands and bowed a third time to the lake. He looked out at the waters. "I don't understand today," he said softly, "but I will achieve enlightenment one day." Waves suddenly rippled across the lake, seemingly in response. He was about to leave when his eyes flickered. Turning his head, he saw several beams of light flying toward him in the distance. "Meng Hao. So here you are. The priest sent us searching for you. Grab him and everything will be clear." 3 flashing beams approached. 3 cultivators, 1 at the 9th level, 2 at the 8th. All rode massive jade flutes. Meng Hao recognized the 2 8th-level cultivators, Zhou and 2 of the Winding Stream sect who tried to kill him before. The 9th-level cultivator was a young man of about 30, his face cold and indifferent as he stared at Meng Hao. 5 more people followed on foot. Meng Hao's expression was calm. He glanced at them, then ignored them, bowing again to the North Sea. Zhou and Tu's eyes flashed. Their hands flickered with incantation signs as dark clouds accumulated and thunder rumbled. The ninth-level cultivator slapped his bag. An enormous drum appeared. He beat it once, its boom sending rocks and dirt flying toward Meng Hao. Simultaneously, a lightning bolt shot toward Meng Hao. He calmly made a fist and punched it. A boom echoed as it shattered into sparks. His eyes flashed. "Are you looking to die?" he shouted. He leaped forward, a flying sword appearing beneath his feet. He transformed into a multicolored beam as he shot toward the three above. The mass of dirt and rocks was almost upon him. He punched toward it. The power of the great circle of qi condensation erupted in Meng Hao's body. He was cut off from heaven and earth's spiritual energy. The cloud of sand and stones shattered into nothing. A massive wind rose. His three opponents' faces filled with shock as they felt a force like a mountain pushing against them. They spat blood, Zhou and Tu especially. Their jade flutes shattered and they retreated in astonishment. Two sword auras shot past them. Their heads flew into the sky, blood spraying everywhere, dead in an instant. Meng Hao turned to the ninth-level disciple. His face paled and his body trembled as he retreated. The people on the ground had stopped, astonished. What is your cultivation base?" the disciple said, his heart trembling, disbelief on his face. Someone at the ninth level couldn't kill two eighth-level cultivators in an instant. Perhaps Foundation establishment. Though Meng Hao emanated an enigmatic air, it wasn't Foundation establishment's power. The disciple was incredibly surprised and bewildered. Even as the words left his mouth, Meng Hao moved forward, face tranquil. The disciple's heart raced. He turned and fled. Unfortunately, he was only ninth level. He couldn't match Meng Hao's speed. He'd barely begun fleeing before Meng Hao was beside him. His fist descended. The disciple's pupils constricted as a profound sense of danger encompassed him. With a low shout, he slapped his bag. Flying swords, a drum, and a jade slip covered in mystical carvings appeared. Meng Hao's expression didn't change. His fist descended, the swords shattered, the drum exploded, then the jade slip. The jade slip could withstand a ninth-level attack, but Meng Hao was of the great circle. It shattered into pieces. None provided defense. The disciple was out of items. He watched wide-eyed as Meng Hao's fist approached and landed on his chest. A bang rang out. This famous winding stream sect disciple, known throughout the state of Zhao, fell. His chest sank in and blood fountained from his mouth. Like a kite with severed string, he tumbled backwards 20 or 30 meters dead. From start to finish, a few breaths for three people. The remaining disciples on the ground had looks of profound fear on pale faces. It was hard to tell who fled first as they scattered almost immediately. Their only thought, run. Meng Hao's expression was the same, but inside he sighed. Because of Yan Ziguo, he'd learned the importance of leaving no witnesses. Killing must be done resolutely. Though he didn't want to, attacking was a necessity. The old Meng Hao wouldn't have moved against fleeing people, but today was different. His eyes flashed. 10 flying swords flew out, infused with the Great Circle's power. The poor quality swords couldn't contain it, so they exploded into countless fragments that flew forward. Blood-curdling screams rang out. Each fleeing disciple dropped dead. Chapter 91. What goes around comes around. Fire globe after fire globe descended onto the corpses. The reek of blood still filled the air, but it was soon overpowered by the stench of scorched flesh, which emanated in all directions. Meng Hao collected the bags of holding. He sniffed the air, glanced once at the North Sea and left. "I can't stay in the state of Zhao anymore. I need to leave." Meng Hao knew that if the winding stream sect had appeared, then the rest of the three great sects must also be aware of the deaths of their priests and elders. Soon, the mountains would be crawling with qi condensation cultivators seeking to determine how they had died. Meng Hao frowned. An image appeared in his mind, a map of the southern domain. On the other side of these mountains was a vast plain which was the border of the state of Zhao. "It's not far, but violence will come soon. I can't stay." Meng Hao changed direction. These were Reliance Sect mountains. He would leave the state of Zhao by a different route. With his mind made up, Meng Hao raced forward. Unfortunately, before he could get far, his eyes narrowed, and he dropped to the ground. Frowning, he looked off into the distance with cold eyes. A few dozen kilometers ahead of him, an enormous glowing shield was descending from the sky. It transformed into countless flakes of flying snow which cut off the Reliance Sect outer reaches from the rest of the world. Floating in the sky off in the distance was a middle-aged man wearing a long black robe. His cultivation base was at the foundation establishment stage. In his hand he held a piece of frozen jade. Beams of light twirled around it slowly. This magical item was the source of the flying snow shield that surrounded everything, sealing it off. Surrounding him were 7 or 8 dignified chi condensation cultivators from the Cold Wind sect, identifiable by their robes. No wonder they're called the Three Great Sects. Even with so many foundation establishment elders dead, even more appear. Meng Hao's heart sank as he realized that this seal had completely cut off his path of escape. He had no way to leave now. Before he had time to examine the situation further, he suddenly shot backward. The flying snow shield had suddenly begun to contract rapidly. As it did, it completely froze the land and trees it passed. It moved rapidly, heading directly toward Meng Hao's position. Of course, it wasn't targeting Meng Hao. This was just a normal function of the sealing spell. The contraction wouldn't last long. It would move inward a few hundred kilometers, then stop. Meng Hao was not very far away from it. As he retreated, he had no time to conceal his movements. As it approached, he hopped onto a flying sword, transforming into a beam of light, which of course attracted the attention of the Cold Wind sect cultivators. That person. It's Meng Hao, I saw his picture. So it's Meng Hao. The priests and the others are looking for him. Seize him. Then we can finally understand what happened here. The eyes of the Cold Wind sect cultivators glowed with ill intentions. All of you go capture him, said the Foundation establishment cultivator. I'm consolidating the sealing spell and still need few moments. Having just activated the seal contraction, he wasn't able to leave his position. However, as far as he was concerned, Meng Hao was incapable of escape. As soon as the words left the man's mouth, the 7 or 8 Cold Wind disciples shot after Meng Hao in pursuit. Meng Hao's eyes glittered. He shot forward, the seal contracting behind him, the cultivators right behind it, hot in pursuit. As he raced forward, the Cold Wind shield grew closer and closer, until it was only about 30 meters away. Finally, it slowed down and stopped contracting. It became a thick ice shield covering the Reliance sect mountains. The seal wasn't fully solidified. At the 9th level, he couldn't have sensed it, but at the great circle of chi condensation, he could tell the seal wouldn't hold long. I can't get out and I can't kill my way out. I need to get over the mountains as fast as possible. Looking at this seal, I can tell it will start to loosen up soon. Once it does, I can make my escape. Meng Hao gritted his teeth. He knew that this plan was a bit of a stretch, but he didn't have many other options. Finding a way to conceal himself for a bit of time would do, but first he had to take the initiative to get out of his current situation. Eyes gleaming, he ceased his retreat. Instead, he stood there, watching coldly as 8 Cold Wind sect cultivators approached. 8 people in all, 2 of the 9th level of chi condensation, 4 of the 8th and 2 of the 7th. They all have magical flight items. It seems the 3 sects are quite anxious. They spared no cost to arrive quickly. Meng Hao glanced back at the Foundation establishment cultivator. He was maintaining the spell and couldn't move at the moment. However, as a Foundation establishment cultivator, he was extremely powerful. He floated there, looking coldly at Meng Hao. As their gazes locked onto each other, the 8 other cultivators shot through the flying snow shield. This was one of the strange properties of this particular shield. It could be entered into, but not exited. The 8 descended on Meng Hao with vicious grins. He sprang into action. He clenched his right hand into a fist, stepped forward, and smashed it into the ground. The power of the great circle of chi condensation exploded as a gale-force wind slammed into the 8 cultivators. They stopped in their tracks, shock written on their faces. 2 wooden swords appeared in his hands, screaming through the air. The heads of 2 7th-level disciples flew. One breath, said Meng Hao to himself. The Foundation establishment cultivator had said he only needed a few moments. Meng Hao wasn't sure if that was true or not. Either way, his own requirement was that he wipe out these 8 people within the space of 10 breaths. The remaining 6 scrambled for magical items. Before they could draw them, Meng Hao spun toward an 8th-level cultivator and rammed him with his shoulder. Boom! Blood shot from the cultivator's mouth as his body caved in. Before he flew back, Meng Hao flicked his hand. A 60-meter flame python roared forth toward another 8th-level cultivator. A blood-curdling scream rang as it consumed him whole. 4 breaths. In 4 breaths, Meng Hao had killed 4 people. The remaining 4 looked on in shock. Meng Hao had attacked with a viciousness they had never before seen. Now that he had revealed the power of his cultivation base, the remaining 4 cultivators trembled, unable to comprehend what was happening. The distant Foundation establishment cultivator watched in shock. Moments ago, Meng Hao was ninth level. In a few breaths, he'd reached an incredible height. 6 breaths. Meng Hao's hand flickered in an incantation. The sword auras spilled out. The remaining 2 8th-level cultivators tried to defend as the swords shot forward, stabbing through their hearts. Horrified screams rang as their bodies fell. Now only 2 cultivators remained, both of the 9th level of Qi condensation. Their faces pale, they had already begun to edge backwards. When Meng Hao's cold gaze fell upon them, they scattered, each one running off in a different direction. Meng Hao raised his right hand with an incantation. A 15-meter wind blade appeared. Simultaneously, he slapped his bag. The black bow appeared. He drew and shot an arrow toward the other cultivator. 8 breaths, said Meng Hao softly. 2 booming sounds rang out. The wind blade slashed through the first 9th-level cultivator, splitting his body in 2 and sending blood and gore splattering everywhere. Simultaneously, a black arrow pierced the other cultivator's head, causing it to explode violently. 8 breaths, 8 kills. Meng Hao, expressionless, looked out through the flying snow shield at the Foundation establishment cultivator for a moment. Then his body transformed into a glittering beam, and he shot off into the distance. He evaded many cultivators, but the sealed area was small. With 8th and 9th level cultivators searching, they wouldn't need long. Foundation establishment experts could fly and search faster. Meng Hao continued evading until he neared the Reliance sect. 10 beams of light appeared, soaring forward. Leading them was a grim-faced old man. Unlike the others, he wasn't soaring but actually flying. Cultivators of the Qi condensation stage could not do this. This man was clearly a Foundation establishment cultivator. The upright evening sect, Meng Hao sighed. He finally accepted that escape was impossible. He could hide, but they would find him eventually. Meng Hao, the upright evening sect cultivator's faces twisted. The Foundation establishment elder raced toward him, eyes blazing. Meng Hao's eyes grew dark as he watched the Foundation establishment cultivator approach. The massive power of the Foundation establishment stage roiled from the man. The immensity of this power caused the surrounding Qi condensation cultivators to shrink back, their cultivation bases teetering. This was the might of Foundation establishment. He flew through the air with seemingly no effort, imposing to the extreme. Without even trying, he caused the Qi condensation cultivators to tremble. But Meng Hao wasn't ordinary. A 13th-level Qi condensation cultivator hadn't existed in ages. He possessed spiritual sense, weak but present, so his cultivation base remained stable. His body, vessels, and bones were all stronger. He refused to retreat even half a step. So, the person who created all these waves in the state of Zhao is a cultivator halfway to the Foundation establishment stage, said the Foundation establishment cultivator coolly. Today, however, if I say you shall die, then die you shall. Just then, another beam of radiant light appeared from behind Meng Hao. It screamed toward them. This was none other than the Cold Wind Sect's Foundation establishment expert. He radiated a killing aura. I tread the path of cultivation, and am not ignorant of the rules of life and death, said Meng Hao coolly. I can kill others, so naturally others can kill me. But let me ask you a question. You 3 sects permitted Shangyuan Zhu to absorb the life force of the mortals of 3 counties. He even damaged their longevity. Mortals do not practice cultivation. Harming a cultivator is one thing, but you, for selfish personal gain, permitted such a horrific act. This is a violation of the theory of law. What goes around comes around. He had wanted to say these words for a long time. Theory of law. In heaven and earth, the powerful people make the laws. And if what goes around comes around, then you've got something coming to you, wouldn't you say? Meng Hao said nothing. He simply looked up into the sky. This chapter was sponsored by Robert Morin. Chapter 92. Exterminate Foundation Establishment. The old Foundation Establishment cultivator from the upright evening sect faced Meng Hao, with the enraged cold wind expert behind. 2 of the 3 great sects' Foundation Establishment experts had arrived. Meng Hao was trapped. Escape seemed impossible. He could theoretically lead them to Patriarch Reliance's meditation zone, but that required the Patriarch's aid, unlikely given their history and his temperament. Meng Hao had already used that ruse once. Still, he had no better option. The priests and elders of the 3 great sects are not dead, he said suddenly, just as the Foundation Establishment cultivator from the upright evening sect approached with hand raised. As soon as the words left his mouth, the old man's eyes gleamed. The face of the man from the cold wind sect also flickered. They're trapped inside Patriarch Reliance's Immortal's Cave. It's right over there. He lifted his hand to point at the East Mountain. The eyes of the Foundation Establishment cultivator from the cold wind sect flashed like lightning as he glanced up at the peak. The group of Qi condensation cultivators from the Upright Evening sect also looked toward the East Mountain. But the Upright Evening expert smiled, a gruesome, mocking grin. I'm curious how you know the three sect's priests and elders are dead. Meng Hao's heart sank, though his face remained calm. It actually doesn't matter what you say. Once I get a hold of you, you'll answer all my questions. He lifted his right hand and stretched it out towards Meng Hao. As he did, the power of his Foundation Establishment cultivation base exploded out, and an enormous hand appeared in the air in front of him. It screamed through the air, heading directly toward Meng Hao. Meng Hao immediately began to dodge, but even as he did so, the Foundation Establishment cultivator from the cold wind sect flicked his sleeve and gave out a cold laugh. A fierce wind shot toward Meng Hao. Both Foundation Establishment cultivators attacked at the same time. Meng Hao slapped his bag. Lightning coalesced into a flag. This flag was one of the objects he had taken from Patriarch Reliance, and it had the power to defend against attacks from Foundation Establishment cultivators. As soon as it appeared, it grew, transforming into a sheet of mist, within which lightning roiled. The mist expanded out to cover Meng Hao. An explosion rolled out. Meng Hao coughed blood and was hurled back. The eyes of the old Foundation Establishment cultivator grew wide, and he stared in shock at the mist. The man from the cold wind sect gasped loudly. The mist was 15 to 20 meters wide. Meng Hao's face was pale, blood smeared on his mouth. His organs ached and bled. Only immense effort kept them contained. The flag required significant refinement to master, and he'd had little time. He could use only half its power, which rotated unstably around him. An excellent treasure, the old man said, but you can't use it correctly. Let's see how much you can withstand. He moved forward, raising his hand again. A field of black dust spread out in front of him. It glittered as it transformed into a multitude of black threads, which then flew toward the mist. A boom rang out as the old man approached. Each wave sent black dust threads crashing into the mist with thunderous booms. The cold wind cultivator flashed an incantation sign. His hand transformed into ice, shattered, and reformed as a larger icy hand that shot toward Meng Hao. It reached him instantly. The threads and icy hand contracted the mist. Blood sprayed from Meng Hao's mouth as his body nearly tore apart. His mind reeled, his face deathly pale. Life and death peril enveloped him. The thread linking him to the flag could sever at any moment. When that happened, it wouldn't matter that Meng Hao's cultivation base had completed the great circle of Qi condensation. That was still the Qi condensation stage, and he was facing the Foundation Establishment stage. The gap between the two was too vast. At this critical moment, Meng Hao's bloodshot eyes flashed as he slapped his bag. An oil lamp appeared, radiating ancient Qi. The lamp's wick was a nascent soul in meditation, none other than Lord Revelation. The nascent soul was fuel, life force, the fire. The blazing flame cast light on his face as a ferocious expression filled it, his eyes shining with killing intent. He found the only way out. He took a deep breath. Popping sounds erupted from his body as his cultivation base cycled through the great circle's power. His core roiled, spiritual power racing through his Qi passageways. He poured everything into a single breath of Qi. He looked out past the mist. Because the mist was covering him, no one could see the oil lamp in his hand. Furthermore, none of the Qi from the lamp emanated outward. Bangs rang as the mist contracted to 3 meters. The old expert produced more black dust. "Open up," he roared, waving his hand toward the mist. Instantly, an explosion could be heard as the mist shattered and dispersed, reforming into the lightning flag which flew back to Meng Hao. "If I decree your death, you will die." He waved his hand, sending black dust toward Meng Hao. It was then that the old man noticed the oil lamp in the hands of pale-faced Meng Hao. His expression suddenly changed. "Is that?" Meng Hao's killing intent soared. Without giving his opponent a moment, he opened his lips and spit out the Qi. The Qi passed through the lamp's flame and expanded into a massive conflagration. The old expert retreated in shock, but the flames consumed him instantly. Miserable screams filled the air. Fire consumed him, vaporizing the dust in his hand. Within seconds, clothing and flesh reduced to ash. It happened too fast. The surrounding cultivators couldn't react. Before screams could ring out, the old cultivator was ash. Nothing remained, not even his bag. Meng Hao's face was pale, and his hands trembled. The chi he had just shot out contained all the power of his cultivation base, as well as the fearsome might of the oil lamp's flame. Silence fell like death. Wisps of demonic flame drifted where the expert had burned. His screams still echoed. The remaining upright evening cultivators stared in disbelief. Elder Zhang just. What was that fire? This is impossible. Elder Zhang is a Foundation establishment cultivator. How could he possibly die under Meng Hao's hand? They couldn't believe it. A mighty Foundation establishment expert burned to death by a chi condensation cultivator. Impossible. Foundation establishment experts couldn't be killed by chi condensation cultivators. Even a weak Foundation establishment cultivator shouldn't die to a chi condensation disciple. What they had just witnessed set their minds spinning into chaos. They stared at Meng Hao in astonishment. The cold wind cultivator was more shocked than all of them. He stared where the elder had stood, eyes wide, face pale, heart trembling. Indescribable fear gripped him. As a Foundation establishment cultivator, he was elite in the state of Zhao and rarely feared anything. Yet now terror gripped him, petrified. He stared at the lamp in Meng Hao's hand, mind reeling. The terror deepened. He didn't know what fire the chi condensation disciple wielded, but he suspected. That was nascent soul fire. A nascent soul, life force kindled as nascent soul fire. It burns Foundation establishment cultivators and core formation experts. His breathing ragged. He stared at Meng Hao as his scalp went numb. He retreated, not daring approach. His prestigious Foundation establishment status was forgotten. Meng Hao stood there on his flying sword, the lamp in his hand. He made a beckoning motion with his left hand, and the lightning flag flew back into his bag of holding. He rotated his cultivation base, staring coldly at the cold wind sect cultivator. It was at this moment, however, that 3 blurs of light appeared in the air above the Reliance sect, each one over 30 meters wide. Ripples spread out from them as they shot mightily toward Meng Hao and the others. Within the 3 beams were 3 old men who looked as if they had just climbed out of the grave. Their faces were covered with wrinkles, and strong death chi emanated from their bodies. And yet, along with the death chi that circled about them was the chi of their condensation bases. This chi was eminently powerful. It was not quite of the nascent soul stage, but they had definitely completed the great circle of core formation. Meng Hao's heart sank, and he clasped his oil lamp tightly. He had just expended roughly 80 to 90% of his cultivation base. It had taken that much to create the terrifying fire he had just utilized. Their speed was incredible as they approached. A relieved expression appeared in the eye of the Foundation establishment cultivator from the cold wind sect. And yet, at that very moment, a chi appeared which surpassed that of the pseudo-nascent soul stage patriarchs. In an instant, the chi enveloped the entire state of Zhao. An enormous bell appeared above the Reliance sect, and a grim voice filled the air. Patriarch Reliance, get the hell out and face me. The voice crackled like lightning, its power filling the sky. Its might billowed out, shattering the flying snow shield. As for the 9 or so chi condensation disciples from the upright evening sect, blood fountained out of their mouths, and then one by one they exploded, unable to withstand the power. Meng Hao's body shook and he spit out blood. He looked up into the sky, his eyes narrowing. The face of the cold wind sect's Foundation establishment cultivator twisted, and the approaching patriarchs from the 3 great sects looked amazed. They stopped flying and immediately clasped hands and bowed toward an old man in a black robe who stood next to the bell in the sky. His robes whipped about in the wind. Behind him the clouds spun violently. The pupil of his left eye looked like the sun and shone with brilliant light. The right eye was dark and its pupil looked like a crescent moon. On his forehead was a strange-looking slit, within which appeared to be another eye. This eye itself was invisible, but emitted a bloody glow. It was Lord Revelation. Chapter 93. Sever the Tao, change heaven and earth, demonic will. Meng Hao's body stiffened at the sight. The nascent soul burned in the demonic lamp in his hands. Lord Revelation's shout shook the earth for millions of kilometers. Mountains trembled, and the sky filled with dark, rolling clouds. Meng Hao's heart quivered and blood seeped out of his mouth. His body was pushed backwards relentlessly. He coughed up an entire mouthful of blood. Everyone in the region, pseudo-nascent soul patriarchs and the cold wind expert, trembled like cicadas in winter. They didn't dare breathe. Astonished and dreadful, they stared skyward. And yet, despite the quaking of the earth, the area around Patriarch Reliance's secluded meditation zone was completely quiet. Not a sound could be heard from Patriarch Reliance. Lord Revelation hovered next to his bell, eyes shining with the sun and moon splendor. Darkness and light interlocked with the crimson glow from his forehead slit. He raised his right hand and waved it downward. As he did, the dark glow, the bright light and the bloody essence combined to form the image of a hand. It began to descend toward the earth. It takes time to describe but happened instantly. A roar filled the air as the hand fell toward the east mountain. The mountain crumbled, layer after layer disintegrating into dust. By the time it finished descending, the east mountain was gone. The earth shook and a fierce wind kicked up. After destroying the mountain, the hand continued piercing downward, as if Lord Revelation knew exactly where the chamber was. A boom resonated, filling nearly half of the state of Zhao. The earth rippled outwards. It seemed that the hand had pierced down and actually destroyed Patriarch Reliance's secluded meditation zone. When the hand vanished, a massive hole remained, filled with broken restrictive spells. This was truly Patriarch Reliance's chamber. Stone steels and altars lay in ruins. A shattered statue of Patriarch Reliance's face lay exposed. But Patriarch Reliance was nowhere to be seen. Patriarch Reliance, get the hell out here. Finding him absent, Lord Revelation raised his head and roared skyward. The roar vibrated the heavens, rippling outward until it filled the entire state of Zhao. You get the hell out here. Get the hell out here. Get the hell out. Get the hell. Innumerable echoes could be heard, swirling together to form a mighty sound of incomprehensible might. Meng Hao trembled, staring at the giant hole where the East Mountain had stood. Patriarch Reliance had been there hours ago but was now gone. Where was he? His face paled. He couldn't move. Lord Revelation's voice suppressed everything. Anyone with lower cultivation could only struggle to stand. The power seemed to contain elements of the heavens, as if Lord Revelation's will controlled everything. This is not nascent soul stage, this is spirit severing stage. It's definitely spirit severing, otherwise this will could not be present. The three pseudo-nascent core patriarchs of the three great sects appeared even more shocked. Patriarch Reliance, you won't show your face. I'll destroy your only inner sect disciple and wipe out the bloodline of your sect forever. I'll level all of these mountains and melt the entire state of Zhao until you appear. He had already swept the state of Zhao with his spiritual sense, but no matter how he searched, he couldn't find Patriarch Reliance. And yet on his way here, he had clearly divined that Patriarch Reliance was within the state of Zhao. A cold look glowed in Lord Revelation's eyes. This was his true self, here to battle with Patriarch Reliance. And yet Patriarch Reliance was hiding. Powerful killing intent emanated from Lord Revelation. There was a wealth of methods he could use to force Patriarch Reliance to show himself, including killing his inner sect disciple and leveling the mountains. If exterminating the state of Zhao didn't draw him out, he could literally melt the entire nation. Lord Revelation had spotted the lamp in Meng Hao's hands. He looked down, sweeping his gaze across the land. He lifted his hand and waved it downward again. Light poured from his eyes as the forehead slit opened. Blood-red light spilled out. As his hand descended, mountains for tens of thousands of miles rocked and swayed. Above them appeared an enormous hand. At first it didn't seem very large, but amidst thunderous rumblings, it grew larger and larger, until it seemed as if it covered the mountains for tens of thousands of kilometers in all directions. The earth trembled, and the faces of the three pseudo-nascent soul patriarchs were filled with shock. They fled at the fastest speed they could muster. The Foundation establishment cultivator from the Cold Wind sect looked pale. He bit the tip of his tongue, sacrificing some of his cultivation base as he transformed into a prismatic beam of light and fled into the distance. As for Meng Hao, his cultivation base was the weakest. He couldn't even move. The oil lamp flew from his hands, racing toward the giant palm. The cross-legged nascent soul inside opened its eyes, and then radiated a glow similar to that emitted by Lord Revelation. Meng Hao could only watch wide-eyed as the hand grew larger. It covered everything until it was all the sky. Everything for tens of thousands of kilometers turned black. The hand covered all. Then it began to descend. The earth quaked, mountains collapsed. As it fell, Meng Hao felt doomsday arrive. A bitter look appeared on his face as he stood there silently. There was no fear or dread in his eyes. He let out a soft sigh. Is everything going to end? I can't accept it. Stubbornness filled his eyes, a flicker which turned into a roaring flame. In the cultivation world, the weak are prey. The cultivation base is everything. Only the powerful survive. Only strength prevents being crushed. Only then can you stand high. Meng Hao suddenly smiled, filled with understanding. His will burned with desire for power. Now, facing imminent death, he truly understood himself. The sages said learning matters most. In the cultivation world, only the powerful survive undefeated. Meng Hao stared up at the descending hand. He would watch it crush him. He wouldn't close his eyes. He would imprint this on his spirit. If reincarnated, it would haunt him. If there was a next life, he would become invincible. As the hand plummeted, mountains crumbled around him. Everything blurred, blackness filled his eyes. Heaven and earth saw him as nothing but a bug. He didn't struggle. If there is an afterlife, I will never allow something like this to happen again. Amidst the deafening roaring, Meng Hao stood there, trembling. Blood seeped out of his orifices and his bones made cracking sounds. Within moments, he would be reduced to nothing more than a pool of blood. Then a dark red light appeared, glowing brightly, shooting toward the hand from a distant location. The blood-red glow seemed formed from blood dregs refined over eons. A powerful demonic aura poured out, filling the heavens. The aura was so thick it seemed to change heaven and earth's color. In a blink, everything turned blood-red. The bloody glow approached, speeding toward the massive hand that Lord Revelation had summoned, and then it severed it. The severing sent a bloody glow high into the heavens. This severing rended all creation. It seemed strong enough to split heaven and earth, and even if it couldn't, it had the will to try. Sever the Tao, change heaven and earth, demonic will. This person was not Patriarch Reliance. This chapter was sponsored by Joseph Halbaudy. Chapter 94, You Really Want Me to Come Out. A roar erupted as the red beam sliced through. A massive gash appeared between the middle and ring fingers, cutting it clean in half. One slash and the hand was severed. You, cried Lord Revelation. His face flickered and he lifted his head, his eyes flashing. A boom rolled across the land. The giant hand that had blotted out Meng Hao's entire vision split. In a blink, he could see sky again. The hand split into two halves that slammed down on either side of Meng Hao. The ground sank, mountains crushed. Wild creatures unable to flee turned to ash. The cold wind expert, despite his frantic flight, couldn't escape. He was smashed into the ground. The three patriarchs' cultivation bases were extraordinary, and Lord Revelation wasn't targeting them. They sacrificed power to flee, coughing blood as they barely reached the hand's edge. Behind them, earth churned like a violent sea. As it vanished, they stared mutely back. The Reliance Sect's endless mountains were gone. Only a massive handprint remained. But the print was incomplete. A jagged section of earth split it down the middle, jutting skyward like a mountain. Meng Hao stood atop it on a 300-meter stretch, with massive holes plunging down on either side. This mountain shouldn't exist, yet it was the only thing left. Meng Hao stared skyward, unsure who'd saved him. He didn't pause. A flying sword appeared beneath him, and he shot toward the handprint's edge as a multicolored beam of light. I never thought the demon lord of the southern domain would appear in this tiny state. Lord Revelation's face darkened as he flicked his sleeve, his voice thundering. But you're only a clone. Your true self is suppressed, incapable of stopping me from exterminating Patriarch Reliance. There was no response. It was almost as if the blood-red severing glow hadn't appeared at all. Patriarch Reliance, get the hell out here. Get the hell out here. Get the hell out here. Lord Revelation slapped the revelation bell as his voice boomed. Its sound filled the sky, echoing across the land. Countless tall mountains throughout the state of Zhao began to crack and crumble as a voice filled with profound ancientness filled the air. It was impossible to tell where it came from, yet it filled the entire nation. You really want me to come out? Meng Hao's eyes narrowed. It was Patriarch Reliance's voice, yet different, less unreasonable, more dignified and ancient. So you finally speak, Lord Revelation said, eyes glittering. Quit hiding. We settled this 1,000 years ago. You shouldn't have taken my clone's nascent soul. Today we battle and I'll remain, you won't. He flicked the bell. It boomed, emitting blinding light that enveloped him as he glowed brightly. This battle must be won. He determined Patriarch Reliance's level. Lord Revelation had completed the second spirit severing and could exterminate him. He had complete confidence. He'd come as his true self. A demon lord's appearance didn't scare him. He couldn't lose. The revelation bell, having absorbed countless prayers and sacrifices, was sentient and invaluable. With it, he could beat even a third severing expert. Besides, the Dawn Immortal had gifted him a portion of spiritual sense. Silence fell. Then Patriarch Reliance's ancient voice returned. Back then, I only cared about the Milky Way Sea. The voice echoed with ancient power across the state of Zhao as the land quaked. This quaking filled the entire state of Zhao. Even the mortals could feel it. Meng Hao ducked his head and shot forward even faster. I don't know how many years passed, nor how many times I slumbered and awoke. Finally, a day arrived in which I woke up to find myself facing a through and through bastard who should have died 1,000, no, 10,000 deaths. From his tone, he seemed to be getting upset. The last few words were spoken as if through clenched teeth. As he spoke, the trembling across the state of Zhao grew more intense. Mountains and boulders trembled, tall buildings rocked back and forth. Within the three great sects, the remaining cultivators looked around in shock. The situation was the same in Milky Way City. Meng Hao's mind spun. He was wondering which bastard patriarch Reliance was referring to. The bastard couldn't defeat me, so he brought others. We fought for years. In the end, they deceived me. They promised much, convinced me to leave the Milky Way Sea for the southern domain. Patriarch Reliance seemed to be growing angrier and angrier. As he spoke, the land of the state of Zhao shook even harder. In the northern part of the nation, a thunderous roar sounded up into the heavens. A massive crack appeared in the land, millions of miles long and growing longer. If you could stand far up in the sky and look down, you would be able to see that this massive crack was not a straight line, but a curving arc. When I got here, they tricked me. They fed me things that sealed me underneath an invisible barrier. They promised a blessing later, but they died or disappeared, all except one. While I slept, he fled to another planet, leaving me a demon sealing Jade for a successor. In truth, they feared heavenly tribulation and wanted to use me against it. Patriarch Reliance seemed to be gnashing his teeth. The sound reverberated across the land. A huge crack appeared in the eastern region of the state of Zhao, accompanied by a thunderous roar. The shape of the crack was a massive semicircle. Lord Revelation's face changed, growing apprehensive. Meng Hao took in a breath, thinking of the demon sealing Jade that he had. The bastards didn't keep their promise. They tricked me. I was enraged, and even though I slumbered, I still managed to squeeze out a bit of spiritual will. It was weak and constrained by the laws of the Tao of the heavens, so it was incarnated into the body of a mortal. It started from scratch, practicing cultivation. Because they tricked me, I decided to sever their legacy. I changed the name of the demon sealing sect to the Reliance sect. From then on, my spiritual will called itself Patriarch Reliance. As his voice boomed out, Meng Hao's eyes suddenly grew wide. He looked back at the land of the state of Zhao behind him. It seethed like an ocean under the echoes of Patriarch Reliance's words. Lord Revelation's expression shifted to shock. He moved backward without thinking. A boom rolled out and massive cracks appeared in the south, then east. 4 arcing cracks split out, surrounding the entire state of Zhao in a massive circle. The state of Zhao rose into the air. Black soil was revealed, fierce winds blew, and massive amounts of soil crumbled from the edges. As it rose, the land quaked and clouds roiled. Lord Revelation's face paled, his eyes shocked. It rose higher and higher, 3,000, 15,000, 30,000 meters, impossibly high. Meng Hao remained on it, feeling as if he approached the heavens. It contained mortal cities, the 3 great sects, Milky Way City, and countless lives. The entire state of Zhao was being lifted up, rising away from the earth, away from the southern domain. Beneath it was a massive, enormous hole in the ground. The hole was, of course, the same size as the entire state of Zhao. Standing above the hole was a vicious turtle as large as the state of Zhao, its body covered with countless black spikes. The mythical Xuan Wu black turtle. Earth covered the turtle's massive shell, as if the shell were being held in place by the land. The earth was none other than the state of Zhao. A colossal head emerged, 1/10 the size of the state of Zhao, black skin covered in creases. Earth crumbled as it rose. Its massive eyes looked down on Lord Revelation, tiny as an insect, panting, pale, quivering, disbelief in his eyes. "You called me, shall we fight?" Chapter 95. A rain shower, a cold spell. Meng Hao stared dumbly, mind reeling. Nothing he'd seen compared to this. His mind blanked. He could only stare numbly. Patriarch Reliance was actually a mind-bogglingly enormous black turtle. And the state of Zhao existed on the earth upon his back. He'd lived on Patriarch Reliance's back 20 years. That name made sense, relied upon by an entire nation, not just individuals. When sealed, Patriarch Reliance slumbered, but managed to force out a sliver of will that attempted to destroy the demon sealing sect's legacy. Now it made sense. The Reliance sect was once the demon sealing sect, few remembered now, and its reputation as an evil sect with brutal internal struggles suddenly made sense. The body containing his will reach spirit severing, but his actual body, how powerful was it? Many things remained unclear. If so powerful, why couldn't he free himself from the start? Would he have died without Meng Hao? Why absorb others' power if his body was that strong? The three patriarchs lifted with the land stared in shock, minds spinning, expressions astonished. They couldn't feel fear. They could only stare blankly, barely believing their eyes. Lord Revelation was also struck speechless as he looked up at the massive head. It was immeasurably larger than he himself. In fact, it was so large that you couldn't even see from one end of it to another. Fear shone from his eyes. How could he possibly have imagined that the patriarch Reliance he had cursed and challenged to fight would be like this? As Patriarch Reliance's voice echoed, it stabbed into Lord Revelation's ears, making his body tremble and scalp numb. His will to fight dissolved. Patriarch Reliance didn't need to strike. Now truly appearing, he casually exerted pressure on Lord Revelation. His body trembled, blood seemed to stop flowing. His spirit-severing enlightenment collapsed. He was a bug. Patriarch Reliance could crush him with a breath. The head's terrifying pressure made Lord Revelation's mouth go dry. Despite his extraordinary cultivation, cold sweat covered him. The bell and the dawn immortal's spiritual sense gave him no comfort or safety. Now he understood why Patriarch Reliance had paid no heed when he mentioned the dawn immortal. Of course he wouldn't, considering his extraordinary actual body. And now he knew why Patriarch Reliance didn't fear the dawn immortal. Even more astonishing was that in his recollection, according to all of the ancient texts he had studied, the state of Zhao had existed for a very, very long time. This made him even more frightened. Which had existed first, Patriarch Reliance or the state of Zhao? If the state came first, that was easier to bear. If Patriarch Reliance, Lord Revelation trembled so hard he thought his skin might explode. Well, shall we fight? Each word rumbled like thunder. The booming hurled Lord Revelation back thousands of meters. Blood showered from his mouth. The bell cracked, fractured. No, there's no need to fight, Lord Revelation said hastily, face pale. I was joking, Patriarch, sir. Please forgive me. He trembled under the enormous eyes. Without your two palm strikes, I couldn't have come out. Those bastards sealed me ages ago. It weakened recently. To break it, I needed to recover more power. But someone released spirit-severing power, knocking the seal looser, and I broke free. His voice boomed. Meng Hao's body trembled hearing this. I planned to use my will to break it, but mortal cultivation and I don't agree. Even with the sublime spirit scripture, I couldn't reach the next spirit-severing stage. Just before the final breakthrough, a hateful bastard cheated me. Damn them all from the demon sealing sect. They stole the energy I needed, robbed me of my lamp. He roared. Meng Hao wanted to flee. He knew who he meant. You did well. Your attack helped break my seal. I must repay you. Lord Revelation gaped in shock. Then his expression changed to wild joy. How could he have imagined this lucky break? As he clasped his hands in respect, Patriarch Reliance opened his mouth and with blinding speed snapped him up. Lord Revelation and the bell were swallowed instantly. Crunching sounds emanated from Patriarch Reliance's mouth, no scream. Meng Hao's breath quickened. He knew Patriarch Reliance's unreasonableness too well. He unconsciously retreated. Suddenly, the massive head swung toward him, stopping several hundred meters away, staring. Meng Hao forced a smile. He didn't fully believe what Patriarch Reliance told Lord Revelation, but didn't disbelieve either. From experience, most of what the Patriarch said was untrue. Congratulations on. Now that you know the truth, are you frightened? Patriarch Reliance's voice thundered as he glared at Meng Hao. The sound was nearly deafening. He coughed blood. You demon-sealing sect people are all bastards, Patriarch Reliance said slowly, staring at Meng Hao. Those old bastards were like this and you're the same. You all cheated me, but never mind. You're Reliance sect now. Allow me to bless you with. Meng Hao's scalp grew numb. Remembering what happened with Lord Revelation, his mind raced for a way out. Suddenly, inspiration struck. He remembered the young girl guiding Trirane's words at the North Sea. Big brother, its aura is beneath your feet. Don't provoke it. Remember, the great path of demon sealing, a concept like a scripture. He hadn't understood then, but now, the it was Patriarch Reliance. The great path of demon sealing, a concept like a scripture. Don't provoke it. His mind flashed. Even as this happened, Patriarch Reliance finished speaking. Bless you with some good fortune. I need to repay you. He finished speaking. Meng Hao lifted his hand and slapped his bag. The demon-sealing Jade appeared. A strong wind buffeted his face. When it faded, Patriarch Reliance's head was 9 meters away. The ends were invisible. All he could see was black skin and a massive eye the size of a city. The eye seemed to be struggling. "Ancient Tao," said Meng Hao hurriedly, reciting the first line from the demon's sealing Jade. "Tenacious desire to seal the heavens, benefaction for all in the mountains. Tao tribulation must come to the 9 mountains and seas. My fate is the Aeon." The words left Meng Hao's mouth. Patriarch Reliance lifted his colossal head and roared massively. Ripples billowed out. A 9-sided mystical symbol appeared on his forehead, ancient, archaic, deeply embedded. It flickered and his body shook. "Stop damned scripture and sect." A ferocious expression crossed his face. He roared again, then stared at Meng Hao. Their eyes met, hearts pounding. Patriarch Reliance's thought raced. The seal was broken, but its mark remained, forcing him to be Tao protector of the 9th demon sealer. Impossible. The sect had committed crimes against heaven and suffered misfortune. They knew 9 was sacred to the heavens, that the greatest opposition would fall on the 9th sealer, so they wanted him as protector. But this kid was chi condensation. How could he be a master? Those bastards. He changed the name to Reliance Sect and created discord to prevent someone like Meng Hao from appearing. Mist seeped from the North Sea, part of the state of Zhao, on Patriarch Reliance's back. Within it, a boat appeared. An old man and young girl stood at the prow, looking up at Patriarch Reliance. They clasped hands and bowed with utmost respect. "Guiding Trirane pays respects to Patriarch," said the young girl. Her voice, clear and melodious, echoed out with a light and spiritual tone. "Ah, you're the sentient rain that fell in the 3rd month of the Yiding year of the ancient Gu calendar. You fell onto my back and became a lake." The young girl smiled and nodded. Then she looked toward Meng Hao and winked. Meng Hao took a deep breath. Now he finally understood the meaning of the girl's strange name. Patriarch Reliance snorted coldly. He looked at the girl, then stared skyward. Meng Hao followed his gaze to a faint blood-colored figure. The figure clasped hands and bowed, then disappeared. Patriarch Reliance lowered his head and looked at Meng Hao. "Very well, Meng Hao, keep your distance," he blew a breath. Meng Hao flew skyward, buffeted by glowing black wind, tossed from the state of Zhao to land on the massive hole's edge. "Son of a bitch, I can't even look at him. I'll never recognize him as my master. I'm leaving, the farther the better, he'll never find me. As for my treasures he took, fine, consider them payment. Our debts are settled. My heart can rest." His eyes flickered. The colossal turtle carrying the state of Zhao transformed into a massive beam of prismatic light and disappeared over the horizon. He headed toward the Milky Way Sea. Perhaps this explained legends of an island of immortals, unsearchable, yet when it appeared, anyone stepping on it found a mortal nation. It was, of course, the state of Zhao. Time passed. The skies grew calm. Meng Hao stood at the gaping hole's edge, looking silently where Patriarch Reliance had vanished. Rain began to fall, flowing urgently into the massive pit. Many years later, this area would become a sea. Amidst falling rain, Meng Hao sighed deeply. Images from the past days flashed through his mind. It seemed inconceivable, a dreamlike fantasy. The state of Zhao was gone. Meng Hao looked at the rain, then the hazy sky. He contemplated the past 4 years. "I started as a scholar," he murmured. "My life is like snow. I can only exist in winter. I can yearn for mortal summer, but that's not my life anymore." After a long time, he turned. Surrounded by falling rain, he began a road away from his roots. A lonely figure in the rain, he merged into it. A hot wind couldn't disperse him. This was his life. Life is one experience after another, shaping who you are. Experience cold and you become snow. Experience heat and you become rain. That is what makes life wonderful. Southern Domain, here I come. First, I must reach Foundation Establishment. As he walked through the rain, he lifted his head, eyes glittering brilliantly. He'd never forget the stubborn desire for power beneath Lord Revelation's descending palm. Only the powerful can be invincible. Where did that blood-colored glow come from? Questions circling his mind. Meng Hao disappeared into the distance. This is the end of Book 1. Book 2, Cutting into the Southern Domain. Chapter 96, Demonic Jade in a Mountain Valley. There's no need to explain what Foundation Establishment means. It is a world-shaking transformation that extends longevity and grants a far more fulfilling life than the chi condensation stage. Injuries that kill a chi condensation cultivator merely wound a Foundation Establishment expert. Meng Hao walked through the verdant mountains outside the edge of what had once been the state of Zhao, leaving behind the land that had once been his home. He headed toward the Southern Domain. Even though the state of Zhao had technically been part of the Southern Domain, it was very remote, far, far away from the Southern Domain's center. Given his current cultivation base, if he went on foot, it could take years to get there. However, Meng Hao wasn't in a rush. Though heading toward the southern domain, his primary concern was breaking through to Foundation establishment. Recalling how the state of Zhao had only a few dozen Foundation establishment cultivators, Meng Hao itched with anticipation. He longed to reach Foundation establishment and fly through the sky. Who knows what dangers I will face in the southern domain? I still have to dispel this poison, which requires a more powerful cultivation base. Meng Hao's eyes glittered. With the Qi cultivation manual of the Sublime Spirit Scripture, he could establish a flawless foundation, rare in itself. And he possessed Shangyuan Ziu's secret formula to create a perfect foundation pill. He already had most of the ingredients. With the items from Patriarch Reliance's Immortal's Cave and the Copper Mirror, he was confident he could gather everything needed. If he succeeded, he would possess a perfect foundation, legendary in the cultivation world. I wonder, how powerful is a perfect foundation? His eyes shined as he sped forward. 3 months later, Meng Hao was far from the former state of Zhao. He had passed through another mortal nation, and now wandered a vast wilderness with no signs of life. Lonely mountains stretched endlessly. By day, wild animal sounds echoed across the deep blue sky. By night, stars and moonlight filled it with soft luminescence that enchanted the eye. Meng Hao stood on a mountain peak, taking in the world's beauty. He began to descend. Reading 10,000 books, traveling 10,000 roads, I've crossed tens of thousands of kilometers. Mountains fill the horizon. Everything I've seen and heard fills my heart like an ever-growing sea. His eyes shone. In selecting a location for foundation establishment, one should choose a place with outstanding spiritual energy to improve the chances of success. Meng Hao knew establishing his foundation would be difficult. He spent the next 3 months searching. Meng Hao had wandered for 6 months without practicing cultivation. Having completed the Great Circle, he didn't need to. His heart was calm. He knew he could establish his foundation at any moment. I must select a location with dense spiritual energy to maximize my chances of success, muttered Meng Hao. As he traveled, he avoided wild beasts. The poison flared twice during that half-year. The first time, intense pain racked his body like myriad ants gnawing at his innards, and he tumbled from the sky as 3-colored mist seeped out. He clenched his teeth for 3 days before the pain subsided. The second time, stinking black liquid oozed from his body. Anything it touched decayed instantly. Upon reflection, he determined that most poison had been expelled during the flare-ups. Only the 3-colored poison remained. Over the half-year, Meng Hao practiced with the lightning flag from Patriarch Reliance's cave. He could now create a mist 30 meters in diameter that shot lightning at approaching creatures, its power exceeding that of a foundation establishment cultivator. He used it to protect himself whenever he rested. As for the good luck charm, Meng Hao couldn't find any apparent use for the item. Another month passed. A series of mountainous valleys appeared before Meng Hao. Suspension bridges spanned them. People in rough hemp garments and headgear carried wicker baskets across the bridges. Meng Hao's eyes narrowed. This remote wilderness held mortals. Their clothing differed from what he'd seen in the state of Zhao. Meng Hao looked them over, muttering, then turned to gaze at one of the 7 valleys. After a moment, his flying sword shot toward the valley. As he approached, a thick wave of spiritual energy billowed out. His eyes gleamed. In 6 months, he had never encountered such dense spiritual energy. The valley was extremely deep and long. Looking down at it from midair, Meng Hao couldn't even see its bottom. The only thing he could see was the dense spiritual energy, which roiled out from the deep within the valley. The spiritual energy caused all the living things nearby to grow abundantly and gave the place an otherworldly look. There's even more spiritual energy here than on the East Mountain of the Reliance sect. Meng Hao looked down in amazement. The mist suddenly roiled. Within his bag, the demon-sealing jade quivered. His eyes flickered, and he took out the jade slip. As soon as he pulled it out, a roaring sound filled his head. An understanding from ancient times, the smelting of a demon, severed by the hand of a demon sealer. Such a pity, an inch of joss ash upon which descendants can prostrate. The text appeared, then faded from his mind. Everything returned to normal, but Meng Hao's eyes shone brightly. He gazed down at the mist, then at the jade. Severed by the hand of a demon sealer, the demon sealing sect, the ancient jade, a demon. What secrets does this demon sealing jade contain? Meng Hao looked around. It turned out that many of the mortals on the suspension bridges had caught sight of him. Looks of terror appeared on their faces. One by one, they dropped to their knees and began to kowtow to him. Suddenly, a piercing whistle sounded from another valley. Two beams of colorful light shot out, enormous condors with a rider upon each. Each looked about 40, wearing interlaced blue and green robes. Their dark, gaunt faces were striking. One had a dark greenish-blue snake coiled around his arm. When it flicked its forked tongue, mist poured from its mouth. The other had a colorful, poisonous centipede on his shoulder. One was 9th level chi condensation, the other at the peak of 8th. Neither looked friendly. They halted 900 meters away, studying Meng Hao with cold eyes. Meng Hao's expression was as calm as ever. He put away the demon-sealing Jade and looked at them. He had seen more than one cultivator in the state of Zhao with cultivation bases similar to these people. As they looked him over, another piercing whistle sounded out. From another valley, a winged purple toad flew out, trailing mist. It appeared to be a chi condensation cultivator, carrying an old man on its back. The old man wore interlaced red and yellow robes, his face painted with totemic symbols like a mask. He looked fierce as he flew out to join the other two. The old man was at the peak of the 9th level, extraordinary. Seeing him, the other two changed expression. The old man gazed at Meng Hao, frowning as he tried to assess his cultivation base. "I am the chief of Spirit Toad Village," he said. "If you're just passing through, fellow Taoist, please continue onward. Outside cultivators are not welcome here." Meng Hao's expression was calm. The thick spiritual energy was what he'd searched for the past half-year. To leave might mean years before finding such a location again. Normally he would move on, but the strange reaction of the demon-sealing Jade piqued his interest. He would not leave. He said nothing. His right hand flickered in an incantation gesture. One flying sword after another shot out, instantly forming a rain of over 100 blades. They spun, creating an expanding vortex. The expressions of the old man on the toad, as well as the others, instantly changed. Meng Hao pointed at one valley. The swords shot forth, slamming into the cliff and carving out a simple immortal's cave. "Please allow me to hole up here for a few months," said Meng Hao coolly. Not giving them another look, he shot toward the immortal's cave. The frightening display of over 100 swords made the toad geezer frown. The other two looked hesitant. The man with the snake glared at Meng Hao as he entered the cave. He lifted his arm, and the spirit snake became a black blur, streaking toward Meng Hao. As it approached, a dark, cold look appeared in Meng Hao's eyes. Chapter 97, Cultivation Breakthrough in a Mountain Valley. Before Meng Hao could move, the dark bluish-green spirit snake stopped 30 meters away, letting out a shrill shriek as if sensing something terrible on him. It trembled, then shot backward in retreat, not daring to come closer. A three-colored mist emerged from Meng Hao's head, transforming into a demonic face with an enigmatic expression of weeping and laughter. It spun around him, then let out an intangible shriek that shot toward the spirit snake. The spirit snake let out a miserable cry as the shriek slammed into it. Its body rotted instantly, transforming into a coagulation of blood that splashed to the ground. The old man's expression changed. The two other cultivators gasped in astonishment. Meng Hao also looked on in astonishment, his heart thumping. The three-colored mist was the poison in his body. It had flared twice in the past half-year, but this was the first time it took magical form and emerged of its own volition. Clearly mysterious, the poison could sense other poisons and wouldn't permit them near. This host belonged to it alone. Over the past months, Meng Hao had become convinced that the other two poisons from the three great sects had been completely expelled. They were not as powerful as the three-colored poison and had been forced out. Seeing the spirit snake's death enabled him to finally understand how powerful Lord Revelation's poison was. Of course, the three didn't know this. Fear was written on their faces as they looked at Meng Hao. The cultivator who had lost his spirit snake shot backward, blood seeping from his mouth, regarding Meng Hao with astonished fear. "So the fellow Taoist also practices poison cultivation." The old man stood and saluted Meng Hao respectfully. "Since that is the case, please feel free to stay here. But there is something strange about this valley. It has thick spiritual energy, and every full moon the mist erupts and fills it." His eyes flashed. "Thanks for the warning," said Meng Hao. His body flickered and he entered the immortal's cave. A large stone fell in place to seal it. Outside, everything was quiet. The toad geezer's eyes flashed as he looked at the other two men. They were all silent for a moment. Then they patted their respective spirit beasts and flew off toward another of the valleys. There, 4 more cultivators were gathered. All of them were at the 8th level of chi condensation and wore long gowns of interlaced green and blue. They sat on an enormous black boulder, which pulsed with a dim light. When the light appeared, the boulder seemed to become somewhat transparent. Inside could be glimpsed the skeleton of a two-headed bird. When the toad geezer and the others arrived, the four men opened their eyes. "That outsider is a poison cultivator," said the man who had lost the spirit snake, his voice filled with hatred. "I'm not sure how much he saw, but he refused to leave." "This complicates things," said one of the four sitting cross-legged, frowning. "What is his cultivation base?" "The peak of the 9th level of chi condensation," said the toad geezer calmly. Though Meng Hao could easily reach the 13th level, doing so cut him off from heaven and earth, so he usually remained at the peak of the 9th. "His cultivation base is refined, but if we attack together, he's dead," said the cultivator who had lost his spirit snake. "If he stays, he'll figure out what's happening. In half a month when we pull out the red rope, he'll know. As a poison cultivator, he'll be interested. We should attack together and exterminate him." Some hesitated. Meng Hao was at the peak of the 9th level. Only the toad geezer was strong enough to stand against him. The others weren't powerful enough. If they fought together, they might win, but some would likely die. They looked at the toad geezer. "We don't need to do anything. I told him strange things happen on the full moon. He'll go look himself. The miasma that accompanies the red rope will kill him. If he doesn't come out well, the miasma covers everything anyway. Either way, he's dead. Our ancestral spirit mountain 3 villages cannot be seen by outsiders. Any who do so must die." His eyes gleamed. The other 6 nodded. Meanwhile, Meng Hao sat cross-legged in the immortal's cave. The dense spiritual energy caused his cultivation base to thrum. As he breathed deeply, his boundless core sea began to consolidate. He lifted his head and looked at the large stone sealing the cave. His eyes flashed, and the 2 wooden swords appeared, hovering at his side. He waved his right hand, and a talisman appeared. He sent it to hang on the stone. This talisman from Wang Tengfei was powerful, a non-common item. "These people have secrets they don't want outsiders to know. If they leave me alone, I'll leave them. But if they disturb my cultivation..." Meng Hao's eyes gleamed. He pulled Shang Yuanziu's turtle shell from his bag, the one containing details about the perfect foundation, and looked at it, frowning. "To concoct a perfect foundation pill, I need a pill furnace. I have that from Shang Yuanziu, but it requires skill in alchemy. Without it, the chances of failure are high. These medicinal plants are extremely valuable. A mistake could be expensive." He had no alchemy skill, which was frustrating. Meng Hao pulled out the plants required to make the minor pills. He produced the copper mirror and duplicated some. A few hours later, he had spent a huge amount of spirit stones. Despite his mountain of them, at this pace, he would become destitute. Concocting the perfect foundation pill has 2 steps. First, concoct 7 minor pills, each unique. Second, melt them to create the perfect foundation pill. Missing even one means failure. Of 7, Shang Yuanziu concocted 2. 5 remain. I've never concocted pills. If I fail dozens of times, I won't have enough spirit stones. That could affect my foundation establishment. I need alchemy skill. Meng Hao frowned, studying basic Milky Way city alchemy techniques. Such techniques are difficult to teach yourself and take a long time. Furthermore, many master alchemists guard secret techniques closely, sect secrets. The best method would be to concoct the perfect foundation pill first, then establish the foundation, no rush. That was Shang Yuanziu's route, but his eyes glittered. "Without foundation establishment, I face too many dangers. That's why Shang Yuanziu died. Otherwise, I never could have killed him. This method cannot be used." He was silent, then his eyes filled with determination. "I must reach foundation establishment first. The perfect foundation pill can wait. The perfect foundation pill can repair cracks in the Tao pillars. A flawless foundation is fine." Meng Hao gritted his teeth. His desire to concoct it was intense, but not practical now. "I can only enter the southern domain after reaching foundation establishment. Then I can find a way to dispel this poison. As a chi condensation cultivator, that's virtually impossible." Having decided, he put away the shell and plants, then pulled out a foundation establishment pill to duplicate. He was confident of breaking through, but to be safe, he used a foundation establishment pill. Looking at the 5 pills, he took a breath and slapped his bag. A small flag flew out, lightning curling around it. Meng Hao gestured, and the flag stabbed into the ground. It sucked in spiritual energy, transforming into a fog that enveloped the cave, spreading 30 meters in all directions. "After consuming a foundation establishment pill, my body will turn stiff. With the lightning flag, I'm protected and no one will disturb me. The paralysis will be relatively short." Of Patriarch Reliance's treasures, the demon sealing Jade was most mysterious, but this flag was his favorite. As for the good luck charm, he still hadn't figured it out. He'd study it after reaching Foundation establishment. Taking a deep breath, he picked up a pill and put it in his mouth. It dissolved instantly, and boundless spiritual energy shook his body. Not his first time consuming a Foundation establishment pill, but every time he felt like a tiny boat floating amidst massive, crashing waves. A roaring sound filled his head as he rotated his cultivation base. Boundless spiritual energy flowed through Meng Hao, pouring into his core C, causing it to roar and churn. The demonic core within him suddenly seemed as if it were about to turn into a Tao pillar. Once the Tao pillar appeared, Meng Hao would have broken through from qi condensation and crossed the threshold into the true realm of cultivation, Foundation establishment. Once in the Foundation establishment stage, he would never again be mortal. He would truly be upon the path of cultivation and would never again be a part of the mortal world. To fall back would indicate that he didn't deserve to exist in the cultivation world. He would be a boat sailing against the current. It can be summed up by the phrase, move forward or you'll fall behind. Chapter 98, Valley of the Red Rope. Half a month passed. On one night the full moon was especially bright, outshining the stars. It hung in the sky, filling the land with gentle silvery light. It shone especially brightly on Meng Hao's valley. As it shined down onto the mist, it began to seethe, slowly spinning into a vortex. Outside, the 7 cultivators waited, eyes shining, staring at the mist with anticipation. "The hour has arrived," said the toad geezer. As his words issued out, a gurgling sound came from within the mist. The sound was indistinct, but when it reached the ears it stabbed to the heart. Cracking sounds echoed and the mist roiled. The gurgling became clearer. Amidst cracking sounds, the mist spun into a giant whirlpool. Its edges seemed to pierce the cliff walls, causing them to melt. Liquefied rock poured down. A red rope appeared from within the vortex, as thick as a person's arm and as red as if dyed with countless blood. A droning sound filled the air as the vortex and rope spun. The 7 men seemed vitalized. The toad geezer's eyes gleamed. He bit his tongue, spit blood, and flickered an incantation, producing a black metal fragment. The other 6 did the same, spitting blood and producing fragments. They seemed familiar with the process. The blood entered the vortex, and apparently because of this, the vortex suddenly stopped rotating. The rope, however, did not. The black chips spun and formed into a black broadsword that floated above the valley, pointing at the red rope, which then ceased rotating. With a low shout, the toad geezer flew forward to grab the rope with both hands. He gripped it despite its wet, blood-coated feel. The 6 men appeared behind him, pooling their strength to pull. A thunderous roar filled the area. The rope emerged 30 meters from the vortex, and black-colored qi poured out, eventually reaching and submerging Meng Hao's cave. At 300 meters we got the Jade Spirit Stone. 600 meters and we got the Toxic Miasma. Last time we pulled out 900 meters and got the Stone-Sealed Beast. Today, we will go all out and reach 1500 meters. Right? According to the ancient records of our clan, if we can pull out 1500 meters, it will open the first seal, and the clan's ancestral spirit will awaken. It will form into a poison foundation, and our cultivation bases can ascend another level. The eyes of the 7 men gleamed, and they heaved on the rope. The vortex's bottom was unseen, only blackness, as if the rope had no end. Every tug caused the valley to quake and the ground to ripple, as if the rope were plugged into Earth's core. Shocking booms sounded as they pulled. More toxic miasma billowed out as 900 meters appeared. Suddenly, a stench like rotten fish poured from the vortex's depths. This stench had never appeared before. The 7 men's faces changed. The area immediately around the rope seemed naturally protected from the stench and miasma. Faces pale, they gritted their teeth and heaved again. 1350 meters, 1380 meters, 1400 meters. The men panted, having expended 70 to 80% of their cultivation power. They popped medicinal pills and tugged again. 5 men coughed up blood. Soon, only the toad geezer and the other 9th-level cultivator held out, gritting their teeth as their bodies trembled. "I'm at my limit," said the toad geezer with a roar. He bit his tongue and spit blood. A black beam of light shot out and transformed into an enormous toad, which clamped its mouth on the rope. As it bit down, its body withered, but it held fast and pulled. A centipede shot out, along with several human-sized spiders summoned to help. Even the huge boulder with the bird skeleton flew out, its glow aiding in pulling the rope. 1430 meters, 1460 meters, 1490 meters. The rotten stench grew stronger, filling the valley like the stink of a corpse. The rope would soon reach 1,500 meters. A shrill shriek pierced from the whirlpool, filled with wickedness and hope. But 10 meters remained. The poisoned beasts exploded one by one. As they died, the 7 men's faces paled. The rope slipped from their hands and was sucked back into the vortex. Had they not released it, they would have been pulled in. The men watched silently as the rope disappeared. Forget it, we'll try again next month. The day will come when we pull 1,500 meters. I'm breaking through soon. Once I reach the 9th level, we'll succeed. That outsider is of the 9th level, said one man. We don't need to complicate this. He's probably dead, killed by the miasma. Even at Foundation establishment, he couldn't withstand it unless of our bloodline. The 7 discussed briefly, then dispersed. The mist roiled for 3 days before settling. The spiritual energy grew thick again, and the miasma dissipated. Within the cave, Meng Hao watched with cold eyes, surrounded by the arcing electricity of the lightning flag. He saw everything that happened. The miasma couldn't harm him. They think I'm dead, good. Meng Hao's eyes glittered. I'm not sure if it's the sublime spirit scripture or the demonic core. Establishing my foundation is very difficult. He picked up another pill and frowned. Was the sublime spirit scripture's method real? Or had Patriarch Reliance changed it to match his demonic cultivation? No way to know. Meng Hao's eyes shone with determination as he popped the pill in his mouth and meditated. His core C roared violently, seething and churning as it coagulated. A Tao pillar seemed to be forming, but it was incredibly difficult. Even with the pill, he couldn't succeed. Foundation establishment is the first true hurdle on the path to real cultivation. A foundation establishment pill increases the probability of success by only 10%. Even at the great circle of chi condensation with increased latent talent, it was not easy. 3 more months passed. Each full moon, the 7 attempted to pull the rope. More than a few times, they came to Meng Hao's cave to collect his corpse. But the cave was protected by Patriarch Reliance's lightning flag. Insignificant chi condensation cultivators had no chance of getting inside. They began to wonder if Meng Hao was actually dead. Another 3 months passed, half a year of effort. They hadn't seen a trace of Meng Hao and were mostly certain he was dead. Meng Hao himself wasn't sure how many pills he consumed during the half-year. Every failure meant another pill. Toward the end, he even tried consuming 2 at once. The poison flared twice. Thankfully, Meng Hao was prepared. He dealt with it and continued his attempts. Another month passed. One night, Meng Hao sat as a roaring sound rose in his mind, like claps of thunder. Within his body, his golden core C let out an unprecedented roar, and gold light filled him. He sat meditating, eyes closed, focusing everything on forming the Tao pillar. The demonic core rotated rapidly within his core C, as if about to melt. During the past year, this happened frequently. Meng Hao understood that without the demonic core, foundation establishment would be much easier. The core made things so difficult. Combined with completing the Great Circle, achieving foundation establishment was harder for him than anyone else. Every time the Tao pillar formed, the demonic core disturbed it and it wouldn't coalesce. Golden light shined from his core C. The waters congealed, slowly solidifying into a massive Tao pillar. Then the demonic core spun, causing the sea to seethe and the pillar to fall apart again. Again, his eyes burned. Without hesitation, he swallowed 3 foundation establishment pills. Chapter 99, Foundation Establishment. The demonic core keeps moving, preventing foundation establishment. It can't form the Tao pillar. I must form it. I must reach foundation establishment. I must stop the core from moving. I need more spiritual energy. The 3 pills dissolved in his mouth, erupting with shocking spiritual power that poured into his core C, interrupted by the demonic core. The power caused the sea to shine with blinding golden light. The spinning core suddenly began to slow. Endless spiritual energy filled the sea. A roaring sound suppressed any sign it would spin furiously again. It stopped, unmoving. Popping sounds rang from the core sea throughout his body. His entire core sea seemed to freeze over. In a few breaths, it became completely solid. His life seemed to end. His breathing slowed, his body shook. His eyes shined, and the chi condensation manual of the sublime spirit scripture appeared in his mind. The solidified core C began to slowly shrink. It shrank, changing into a diamond-shaped crystalline rock containing the demonic core. More spiritual energy poured down, and slowly the core C emerged again. As it replenished, it shrank again to form another diamond-shaped lump. More energy poured in, and the process repeated. Meng Hao knew this would take a long time and require much spiritual energy, why he'd chosen this valley. He smacked his bag and consumed more medicinal pills. His core C replenished and solidified into diamond-shaped rocks repeatedly. Meng Hao lost track of time. 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months. Spring became autumn, then winter. A year had passed since Meng Hao entered the cave. Every full moon, the 7 cultivators came to pull the rope. Their best effort pulled out 499 meters. They never reached the final meter. As time passed, the 7 noticed the spiritual energy in the area seemed reduced. Of course, Meng Hao was absorbing it, but they didn't know that and couldn't figure out why. They searched but found nothing and didn't connect it to Meng Hao. A year had passed, in their minds, evidence he had died. The man who lost his spirit snake would often look at Meng Hao's cave with a cold sneer. His spirit snake's death left him with deep hatred. He tried several times to break in and collect Meng Hao's treasures from his corpse. He never succeeded. Another half-year passed. Meng Hao had been meditating for a year and a half. One late night, his core C solidified into a diamond-shaped rock, the 100th. A roaring sounded, and the 100 rocks began to fuse. Slowly, they formed into a transparent, crystalline Tao pillar. Foundation Establishment Tao pillar. Meng Hao's agitated breathing calmed. His eyes dimmed, his internal organs slowed. He was motionless, even his blood seemed to stop. He was in suspended animation. Everything was completely still. This was the second phase, recuperation. He sat cross-legged, his mind echoing with the manual. Though his blood and flesh seemed unchanged, they were transforming to absorb spiritual power more easily. His chi passageways enlarged, growing tougher and smoother. His bones crystallized in places. He transformed, becoming non-mortal. His entire body shook. His hair grew much longer and he became taller. No core C existed anymore, but rather a golden Tao pillar, a flat, circular platform that seemed dark and lonely, floating where the core C had been. His demonic core sat motionless in its center, perfectly fused with the pillar. His heart didn't beat, his blood didn't flow. His chi passageways were motionless, his chi vanished. He sat withered. The Tao pillar was the same, all his chi sucked away. He sat that way another half-year. Breaking through had taken 2 full years. Others would be shocked. Generally, foundation establishment takes at most half a year, often only months. The spiritual energy required was not immense, nothing like what Meng Hao needed. He had wasted far more time and energy than the norm. Toward the last half-year's end, Meng Hao's Tao pillar began to tremble. This was the first movement within him. His heart began to beat. All systems kicked into motion. His blood began to flow, his chi passageways operated, his chi filled with life force. Slowly, he awakened. The Tao pillar shone brightly with golden light growing more intense. His heart thumped wildly, as if about to burst from his body, filling the cave with sound. Every beat sent blood flowing. His chi billowed out and he was soon filled with power, ready to open his eyes. This power awakened his body, moving through him, growing stronger, imbuing it with strength. The Tao pillar emitted a thunderous roar. Powerful spiritual power burst out, blasting through his chi passageways, flesh, blood, and bones. Like spring awakening a withered tree, his body awakened. His chi grew stronger, massive amounts of filth exuded from his pores, replaced by fragrant aroma. His long hair floated around him. He looked completely different from half a year ago. As power emanated out, his chi passageways filled with it, his blood flowed faster. His heartbeat caused the cave to tremble, and his eyes flashed open. Blinding light shot out. A chi condensation cultivator would have had their mind reel and cultivation base damaged. The moment he opened his eyes, the valley's spiritual energy was swept up. Meng Hao became a black hole, swallowing all energy in sight. It was absorbed through his pores into the Tao pillar, which grew brighter. His chi grew even more powerful. His heart thumped as power blossomed in his mind. He knew he could collapse the entire cave by lifting his hand, confidence based on his body, mind, and cultivation base. His spiritual sense grew larger. From completing the Great Circle, it leapt to a higher level. It was far more powerful than the average foundation establishment cultivator. In fact, his spiritual sense exceeded what an early foundation establishment cultivator should have. It equaled middle foundation establishment. And to foundation establishment cultivators, spiritual sense was everything. Meng Hao's breathing echoed. Spiritual energy poured into him and the Tao pillar glowed brighter. Soon, his entire body shined with golden light. Foundation establishment cultivators far exceed chi condensation cultivators in power. By moving his mind, he could see everything within 500 meters as if in his own heart, spiritual sense. An early foundation establishment cultivator normally casts spiritual sense only 200 meters ahead. "The beginning foundation establishment stage," said Meng Hao slowly. His face shone with vigor, eyes glowing. He felt the Tao pillar's power, 100 times stronger than half a year ago at the peak of the 13th level. That 100-fold difference was compared to the 13th level, not the 9th. For Meng Hao, this was complete and utter change. This was why foundation establishment cultivators easily overwhelmed qi condensation cultivators. A Corsi congeals 100 times to form the Tao pillar. The change Meng Hao experienced sent his power leaping upward incomparably. This chapter was sponsored by Michelle Blanco, Saipakalapati, Tjandra Johans, Tu Ha, and Hein Hodgeberg. Chapter 100, Blade Against Flawlessness. When Meng Hao sent out his spiritual sense, he felt cut off from heaven and earth. He'd felt this at the 10th and 13th levels of qi condensation, but now it was stronger, as if the heavens didn't tolerate his cultivation. Yet with that disapproval came strength. Despite being rejected by all creation, this state fought back and was even more powerful. That resistance came from the Tao pillar and the spiritual energy inside him. After feeling the heavens' resistance, Meng Hao quickly determined its source. Not a bit of the spiritual energy he'd absorbed escaped back out. None could be absorbed in. No cycle could be created with heaven and earth, not permitted. At the same time, because spiritual energy didn't emit from him, he vaguely made out strange, immaterial vestiges. Grasping them would make him even more powerful. The heavens didn't permit these, so only rejected cultivators could see and enlighten themselves about them. In the cultivation world, these vestiges were called Tao taboos. Every cultivator reaching foundation establishment could sense them. As Meng Hao sensed the Tao taboos, something shook his body. A cracking sound rang as a fissure appeared on the pillar. Meng Hao coughed up blood and was ripped out of that special state. Vast amounts of spiritual energy poured from the crack. He was powerless to stop it. His body was once again connected to heaven and earth. Though the energy rushing out couldn't compare to what he'd absorbed, he was now in a cycle with heaven and earth. The strange vestiges were gone. He was no longer rejected but accepted, part of them. A flash of weakness appeared in his heart. Meng Hao lifted his head, his vision piercing to the outside. As he looked at the sky, his eyes shone with unprecedented brightness. This was a flawless foundation with one crack. Meng Hao was better than most. A cracked foundation would be much weaker, and a fractured one significantly less powerful. As long as there is a crack, it is not perfect, and thus the heavens accept it. His eyes shined. Because the Tao pillars have cracks, no matter what level I reach, there will always be absorption and diffusion. Do I cultivate for myself or the heavens? He was silent. The question was too profound for a foundation establishment cultivator. However, having studied the sublime spirit scripture and knowing the method to achieve a perfect foundation, he contemplated what only spirit-severing stage cultivators normally could. When Meng Hao reached foundation establishment, it was late at night. The 7 cultivators watched the spiritual energy churn, then looked toward him. What happened? Why is all the spiritual energy being sucked in that direction? Muttering, they rushed forward. But as they approached, they were forced to halt, their bodies trembling. Their spiritual energy felt unstable, as if about to be ripped out. They stood in shock. To these people, foundation establishment was very remote. They couldn't imagine someone reaching it here. In their shock, they didn't dare approach. They made speculations, concluding something strange was happening in the valley. Guessing was the best they could do. "I can sense immense power in the valley," said the Toad Geezer, taking a deep breath and narrowing his eyes. "It far exceeds us. Too bad we can't get closer. What happened? I feel the spiritual energy in my body will get sucked out if I approach." Strange things have happened to the spiritual energy over the past 2 years. Another is happening now. The 7 exchanged glances and grew silent, their hearts filled with speculations. Within the cave, Meng Hao lifted his head, his eyes shining. Had he not glimpsed the perfect foundation, it wouldn't matter. But having felt it briefly, only to have it taken away, made him desire it intensely. The perfect foundation. His eyes flickered and he stood. He flicked his sleeve and the mist rippled, coalescing into a small flag in his hand. He spat out spiritual energy that covered it, turning it into a black beam that entered his mouth. During qi condensation, Meng Hao could only passively use the flag. Now in foundation establishment, he could refine and wield it in more ways. Looking pleased, he took a moment to feel himself out. His eyes glittered. With the sublime spirit scripture, I can form a second course C. When it moves from chi condensation to foundation establishment, it improves foundation quality. For me, it won't make much difference, but I might as well do it. His eyes shining, he sat cross-legged and visualized the manual. Several hours later, his eyes snapped open. A roaring filled his body. He saw a new area outside his Tao pillar, a vast golden sea. His second course C. Having completed this, he raised his hand. The large rock sealing the cave exploded into pieces, then turned to ash. Meng Hao shot outside, becoming a blur of light. He came to a stop, floating in midair. He looked back at the cave, a smile on his face. In the chi condensation stage, lifting his finger couldn't shatter rock. Now it was simple. The gap between chi condensation and foundation establishment is like the difference between sky and land. It's true. However, I should be even more powerful. Sadly, my Tao pillar was cracked by an invisible blade. That is a cultivator's life. There's nothing to do. However, if I repair the pillar, I can establish a perfect foundation. For that, I must concoct a perfect foundation pill. My biggest question is, what is this symbol? His gaze fell to his right hand. On the back, a strange, glowing, magical symbol was slowly fading. It existed inside him, not on his skin. Looking at it, he felt it had existed there for a very long time. This was the first time he'd seen it. He had no idea why it appeared with foundation establishment. The symbol faded and Meng Hao frowned. It gave no feeling of danger, it seemed familiar. He thought about it but couldn't find clues. He put it aside and looked around. He was surrounded by mist, which completely covered him and concealed him from onlookers. He hovered in midair, but he knew he could fly by simply moving forward. Having set aside the strange symbol, Meng Hao considered why flight isn't possible in chi condensation. True flight isn't possible then because the body doesn't contain enough spiritual energy to support itself. Flight requires magical items, but during foundation establishment, spiritual energy is over 100 times that of chi condensation. Because so much has coalesced into the Tao pillar, the body can be supported and can actually fly. There are 9 Tao pillars total throughout foundation establishment. 3 pillars signify the beginning peak, 6 the middle peak, 9 completes the circle. I have 1 pillar. Meng Hao looked at the mist, his eyes flickering. His body became a prismatic beam as he shot further downward. This place reacted to the demon sealing Jade years ago. My cultivation base wasn't powerful enough to search safely then, but now I think I have the power to find clues. Eyes shining, he shot through the mist. The 2 wooden swords appeared, whistling as they circled around him. At foundation establishment, the swords felt different, but he didn't examine them closely. Instead, he shot through the mist, intent on determining what this place was. After descending 300 meters, the demon sealing Jade in his bag started to glow. Meng Hao took it out. He slowed down but continued moving. As he descended, the mist grew thicker and colder, seeming sinister. But Meng Hao was no longer chi condensation. His body could withstand the temperature. After moving for half an incense stick's duration, it grew painfully cold, like blades on his skin. Finally, he saw the valley's bottom. No vegetation, only endless mist. Bones of birds and beasts lay on the floor. Everything was quiet. Meng Hao looked around cautiously, examining his surroundings. Finally, his eyes glittered as they fell on the only part without mist. The mouth of a cave, roughly 9 meters wide. Its edges were frozen earth. It stretched back into inky blackness. Icy coldness poured out, turning into mist. A dark red rope stretched back into the cave's edge. Nothing else. The demon sealing Jade glowed even brighter. Something called for it to enter the mysterious cave. Who knew what was hiding inside? Meng Hao hesitated, looking at the cave. After a moment, he slapped his bag. A flying sword appeared and shot toward the cave, disappearing inside. He concentrated, listening carefully. A sound like metal hitting stone rang out. His expression changed. This ancient cave appears to be about 2,500 meters deep. He walked forward, stopping at the mouth. He hesitated, then looked at the brightly glowing Jade. Determination appeared on his face. He slapped his bag, causing several items to appear. The black net flew out along with 7 or 8 feathers. With the wooden sword circling, he felt nervous. He bit his tongue, and the lightning flag flew out, turning into a flickering, lightning-filled mist around him. Surrounded by his magical items, Meng Hao entered the cave. On this 100th chapter, I give special thanks to RWX for all the support and encouragement. Chapter 101, 8th Generation Demon Sealer. If I don't investigate just because it's dangerous, I'll become even more hesitant when facing real threats. That's no way to survive the law of the jungle in the cultivation world. This demon-sealing jade is from Patriarch Reliance, plainly a demon-sealing sect artifact, and I myself am a disciple of the sect. I must know what this means. Meng Hao's eyes glittered as he recalled the demonic technique of Shang Yuanziu and Patriarch Reliance's demonic magic. Stubbornness filled his heart as he entered the cave. Still, I'll be cautious. At any sign of an enemy I cannot face, I leave, no hesitation. Meng Hao's eyes shone with determination. Lightning-filled mist arced around him. His two wooden swords hovered close, feathers spun in a protective spiral. Caution marked his face as spiritual energy radiated outward. He would sense any threat instantly. As a foundation establishment cultivator, his body was stronger. He could fly and had spiritual sense. All of these made it easier to protect himself and ensure that he lived a long life. They also gave him the opportunity to face dangerous situations with confidence. At the moment, if Meng Hao were of the qi condensation stage, even if he had the courage to enter this place, he simply couldn't. Pitch black, Meng Hao felt intense cold rolling from ahead. Blood qi lingered too, growing thicker as he went. A cautious look on his face, he pressed forward. At 300 meters, he stopped and carved a hole in the wall with a wooden sword, then placed a talisman inside. This talisman was the one he'd acquired from Wang Tengfei that day long ago. At 600 meters, he planted 10 flying swords in the walls. Every few hundred meters further, he repeated the ritual, preparing escape routes should anything go wrong. At 1200 meters, the mist began to seethe. Faint moaning echoed through the cave. Meng Hao's eyes narrowed as he looked around, then pressed on, following the red rope. At 1500 meters, a piercing shriek split the air. The mist around him crackled with electricity, forming a lightning globe that shot forward and struck an indistinct figure, which vanished. Meng Hao's breath caught. Even at Foundation establishment, his lightning flag was strong, yet it had not destroyed the figure, proof of its power. He hesitated, then rubbed the demon-sealing jade and pushed forward. Another 600 meters brought him past 2,000 meters into the cave. Intense cold racked his body. Blood qi hung thick, filling every breath. Crimson patches appeared on his skin, his eyes glowed red. Only 300 meters more. His determination blazed. He unleashed his Foundation establishment power. His Tao pillar thrummed, flooding him with spiritual energy. He surged forward through the tunnel. In moments, he saw the end of the cave and the sword he had left. It was not 2,500 meters deep as he'd assumed. At 2,500 meters was a round platform with a 2-meter-wide hole in its center. The rope, blood-soaked, disappeared into the hole. Meng Hao's sword was embedded in the platform's side. The reason he'd thought 2,500 meters was the end. His eyes narrowed as the demon-sealing jade blazed with light. He saw a corpse sitting cross-legged beside the platform. In the corpse's hand was an ancient-looking jade slip. This slip also emitted a brilliant glow, as if it were somehow connected to the jade slip he held in his own hand. Before Meng Hao had the chance to process all of this, a shrill scream filled the air. A blurred figure raced toward him. The mist defended him, but Meng Hao could clearly see a 6-fingered hand pressing against it, reaching toward him. It stopped about 2 meters from him, where a massive conglomeration of lightning resisted it. A ghastly coldness emanated from the hand, which appeared to belong not to an adult but a child. Boom! Meng Hao was shoved backward. Eyes flashing, he waved his hand and the 2 wooden swords shot toward the indistinct figure. However, despite the sword's incredible speed, the figure was faster. It dodged and then shot backward to crouch next to the round platform. Underneath the glow of the ancient jade, Meng Hao could not see it clearly. Emaciated and feral-looking, it had the build of a 7- or 8-year-old child. Its eyes burned completely red, and when it stared at Meng Hao, black teeth showed in its screaming mouth. Meng Hao's expression was the same as ever, although coldness gleamed in his eyes. Sword auras began to glow around the 2 wooden swords as they circled Meng Hao. Suddenly, Meng Hao's eyes narrowed. From within the hole in the flat platform, 10 dim streams of light emerged as 10 figures appeared which looked exactly the same as the child. They radiated viciousness as they stared at Meng Hao. If this was the extent of it, it wouldn't have been a big deal. But behind the 10 phantoms, revealed by the glow of the ancient jade, Meng Hao saw a white-haired man floating up out of the hole in the platform. He wore white robes, his hair white, his face bloodless. A vicious scar split his forehead to chin, flesh torn back to show bone. His eyes remained closed. The 10 phantoms surrounded him, filling Meng Hao with dread. Dread numbed his scalp. He inched backward. Before 3 steps, the 10 phantoms launched from the platform, screaming toward him. It was at this moment that the demon-sealing jade flew into the air of its own volition. A bright glow spread out from it. At the same time, the ancient jade in the hands of the corpse next to the platform also flew up into the air. An ancient and profound voice filled the air. Ancient Tao, tenacious desire to seal the heavens, benefaction for all in the mountains. Tao tribulation must come to the 9 mountains and seas. My fate is the Aeon. It boomed throughout the ancient cave, causing the 10 phantoms to emit blood-curdling screams. Meng Hao watched as they instantly transformed into black smoke. The white-haired man suddenly opened his eyes. His eye sockets held only bloody holes. His eyes had been dug out long ago. As his eyes opened, the 2 ancient pieces of jade emitted beams of light which interlocked to form a restrictive spell filled with magical symbols. It settled down over the area, causing the white-robed man to begin to tremble, unable to move further. He slowly lifted his right hand against the spell. Silent, yet the entire cave trembled. All happened too fast. Meng Hao's breathing steadied as he looked at the jade. He lifted his hand, the 2 pieces flew to his palm. The second piece of ancient jade was inscribed with a magical character. Meng Hao had seen this character before in his studies in the magic pavilion in the Reliance sect. It was the character for 8. When it touched his hand, an ancient voice filled his mind, echoing from a distant age. The League of Demon Sealers has existed as long as the Tao. I am the 8th generation Demon Sealer Taoist Master. I am determined to walk the path of Tao tribulation of the 9 mountains and seas. In all likelihood, I will perish, so I leave my sentience along with my clone here to resolve the ill-fated relationship between Da Nu and myself. Sealed 3 million meters down, pressed down by the weight of this section of the Milky Way Sea, buried. Grief and sorrow are part of the Tao of heaven and earth. However, I am a Demon Sealer Taoist Master, and I must not allow distractions into my heart. So I leave my clone here to accompany her and resolve her demonic resentment. If you are of the League of Demon Sealers, place a drop of your blood onto the jade in confirmation. If you are not of the League of Demon Sealers, then remove yourself from this place. If the jade leaves without tasting blood, you will be cursed for 3 generations. Your descendants will never see the moon and you shall perish. The voice faded, the glow dimmed. Meng Hao stared at the jade torn. Should he place his blood? If not, could he take the jade? The curse felt uncertain, yet he dared not dismiss it. This chapter was sponsored by Joshua Jacobs and MetaZone. Chapter 102, 8th Demon Sealing Hex. Meng Hao frowned at the black hole. 7 white-robed men now floated there in different positions, their bloody gazes fixed on him. Without seeing their eyes, his body turned cold. This place was deeply wrong. He needed to leave. He looked at the jade in his hand. Resolve hardened his eyes. He bit his tongue, letting blood fall onto the second jade. The blood splashed on it. The jade vibrated. A gray gaseous chi solidified before him and shot toward him, entering his brow. His mind roared as an archaic voice sounded clearly, as if the speaker stood beside him. I was not always the 8th generation Demon Sealer Taoist Master. It was outside of the 6th mountain that I gained enlightenment from the will left behind by the 7th generation Demon Sealer Taoist Master upon his death. I willingly cut away my past and reversed my Tao, inheriting the past generation's Tao. I roamed creation, and eventually refined half of the sea outside the 6th mountain in order to forge the demon sealing jade that is required of each generation. With the help of the demon sealing jade, I mastered the 7th demon sealing hex. Since ancient times, each new generation of the League of Demon Sealers must create a new hex. Therefore, I created the 8th demon sealing hex. Throughout my life, I sought out the other scattered hexes, but sadly by the time I reached the Tao tribulation of the 9 mountains and seas, I had only found 3. What a pity. Successor, if you are lucky, able to absorb the 8th demon sealing hex, and then create the 9th demon sealing hex. Then the League of Demon Sealers will be in accord with the law of the Tao. The League of Demon Sealers seeks out the great demons of heaven and earth, drawing out the aura of all the living things under vault of heaven, seizing demonic lives, refining demonic blood, using it, and then the concepts of demonic sealing, demonic construction, and demonic transformation. I don't know which generation of demon sealing you are, perhaps the 9th. If so, you're lucky but at the same time unlucky. 9 is ultimate number, a peak of deterioration. The path you tread is filled with many variables. This clone only possesses the 8th demon sealing hex. I now pass it on to you. This hex uses demonic chi as its foundation and can seal bodies, seal spirits, seal immortals, seal divinities, seal the luck from the heavens, seal all living things in the world. The voice echoed out in Meng Hao's head, more and more clearly until it became a thunderous roar that branded itself onto his mind. The brand was an ancient character, the character for sealing. The roar faded. 10 days had passed in the outside world. Another full moon had arrived. In the valley outside, the moonlight pierced into the mists, causing them to churn and seethe like sea waters. The toad geezer once again arrived on the scene. This time, there was an additional cultivator of the 9th level of chi condensation. He had obviously just broken through to the 9th level. Nonetheless, this filled the group with complete confidence. Now that brother Sun has made a breakthrough in his cultivation base, we will definitely pull out 1,500 meters. Right? We've waited for this day for too long. If we can pull out 1,500 meters, then our ancestral spirit will awaken. Our cultivation bases will raise to another level. If the luck exists, we might even reach foundation establishment. It's hard to determine the probability of foundation establishment luck. However, according to the ancient records passed down from our ancestors, pulling out 1,500 meters will definitely bring some type of luck with it. They exchanged gleaming glances, then immediately went to work under the thick moonlight. Of course, Meng Hao couldn't be further from their minds. As far as they were concerned, he had long since passed away. They spat blood and formed the black blade. The mist spun into a whirlpool. The red rope appeared. The toad geezer seized it and howled as he pulled. Thunder roared. The rope moved down through the valley into the cave past Meng Hao into the sealed hole. As soon as the rope began to move, expressions of panic appeared on the faces of the 8 or so white-haired men. Suddenly, nearly a dozen of the phantoms which looked like 7 or 8-year-old children appeared. Their shrill screams echoed throughout the deepness of the cave. One of the strange properties of this rope was that, when it was pulled, it began to emit massive amounts of intense coldness, as well as a rotten smell. The glittering restrictive spell trembled, as if it might collapse at any moment. The 7 men heaved the rope, pulling out 15 meters. Roaring intensified, cold and stench multiplied. Soon, a panting sound could be heard in the cave. It sounded as if some living thing were in the midst of some sort of struggle. A figure appeared, screaming shrilly. It launched itself at the shining restrictive spell. The spell shook, and cracks appeared on its edges. It was at this moment that Meng Hao's eyes became fully clear. He shook himself and took in a deep breath. A gleam appeared in his eyes as he became aware of what was happening in the ancient cave. He saw the rope moving, as well as the rapidly collapsing restrictive spell. No time. He bowed to the corpse and shot toward the cave entrance. Before 30 meters, the spell shattered. 10 emaciated phantoms exploded out, followed by 8 white-haired men, all screaming toward him. Behind them, thin streams of blackness floated up out of the deep hole. They looked like hair. The panting sound from within the hole became clearer. Something inside was struggling fiercely, as if it desired nothing more than to burst out of the hole. Meng Hao's face paled, his eyes burning. His Tao pillar spun, flooding him with foundation establishment power. He dashed forward, but the childlike phantoms were faster, crashing repeatedly into his lightning mist. Booms echoed out as the lightning mist rapidly began to deteriorate. The childlike phantoms didn't seem to feel any pain. Every time they were knocked away by lightning bolts, they immediately charged back again. Everywhere Meng Hao looked, spirits charged toward him. Sword auras shined out brightly as the wooden sword circled around him. Feathers spun, causing a wind to blow out. Meng Hao moved onward as quickly as possible. That was when the 8 white-haired men drew close. At the same time, several of the childlike spirit phantoms appeared in front of him, blocking his path. Meng Hao felt a profound sense of danger. Without hesitation, he slapped his bag of holding. 100 flying swords appeared, forming into a sword rain which charged forth. Boom! As soon as Meng Hao uttered the word, the flying swords detonated, turning into a cloud of shrapnel that swept the phantoms off of their feet. Meng Hao raced past them toward the entrance of the cave, which was now about 1,500 meters away. The shrieking behind him grew more intense. More and more black tendrils billowed about. They were nearly 300 meters behind him. Meng Hao didn't have time to look closely. He knew that if he slowed even a little bit, he would most likely lose his life. Even the slightest delay in reaction on his part, and he would be finished. With great risk comes great reward. Getting the 8th demon sealing hex makes all of this worth it. Too bad I haven't gained complete enlightenment regarding the hex, otherwise I could use it right now. He took a deep breath and pushed forward at top speed. The cave entrance was now almost 1,200 meters away. It was then that the white-robed men behind Meng Hao raised their arms and waved their fingers toward him. The finger attacks made Meng Hao's entire body turn cold. Without hesitation, he flickered his hand in an incantation and waved backwards. The feathers surrounding him shot back, then suddenly detonated. Another 100 swords appeared from within his bag of holding. They also shot back and then exploded. A massive boom filled the cave tunnel, resounding outwards and diminishing the power of the white-robed men's finger attacks. However, despite this, they still bore down on Meng Hao. His face was pale as the mist around him shook. A gap opened up. His body instantly became freezing cold and he coughed up a mouthful of blood. The blood instantly froze into solid chunks. It felt as if the power of his cultivation base dropped by half. He was in great danger. However, amidst the danger, Meng Hao suddenly grabbed the red rope. He pulled it, borrowing from its power to shoot forward. Meanwhile, out in the valley, the 7 men gasped for breath. Gritting their teeth, they continued to heave on the red rope, pulling continuously. Behind them were over a dozen poison beasts, mouths clenched onto the rope as they pulled with incredible might. Damn it, how come it suddenly became so heavy? What's happening? We just pulled out 300 meters, it shouldn't be like this. The 7 men were shocked, and anxious expressions appeared on their faces. Suddenly, the rope pulled back on them, jerking them dozens of meters forward. Then the tugging force disappeared. But moments later, even as they gritted their teeth and pulled on the rope again, it was tugged backwards with great strength. As they cried out to each other in confusion, Meng Hao was inside the cave, pulling on the rope to launch himself forward. He coughed up more blood. Without hesitation, he consumed some medicinal pills, not wasting any time as he used all his power to flee. His expression was grim. The lightning mist thinned. Had his reaction been any slower to the white-robed men's finger attacks, he would have frozen solid. Chapter 103, Treasures. "What is that?" gasped Meng Hao grimly. Without pausing to wipe blood from his mouth, he swallowed a Foundation establishment pill. Its power immediately dispelled the cold. Only Meng Hao wasted pills so freely. He became a flash of light, pulling the rope to surge toward the cave mouth. 600 meters remained. 9 meters behind him, black tendrils and phantoms snapped at his heels. 2,500 meters back, a human head appeared at the end of the black mass. The red rope penetrated the head between the eyebrows, and then continued to stretch down into the darkness. It was a woman's head. Her features were ethereal, as if not of the mortal world. Confusion and frustration filled her open eyes, too many unanswered questions from her life. 600 meters should take moments at his cultivation base, but cold slowed him, and relentless pursuit demanded focus. The hair tendrils continued to spread out, and it seemed as if it would reach Meng Hao's feet at any moment. Meng Hao took a deep breath, then lifted his hand toward the rocky wall. As he pushed against it, the power of his cultivation base exploded out to activate some of the backup magical items he had placed there. 10 flying swords suddenly flew out, shooting toward the tendrils and then exploding. A boom echoed out, shaking the cave. Meng Hao shot forward, pulling fiercely on the red rope. Outside, 3 of the 7 cultivators spat blood and fell back. The remaining 4 gritted their teeth, holding fast. Behind them, the poison beasts weakened. Maybe this time there will be an incredible treasure. That's why it's so heavy. Right, when we pulled out that spirit-sealing rock, it was incredibly heavy. Haha, we'll pull out a similar treasure this time. Don't be stingy with your medicinal pills. We have to pull out this treasure. The 3 injured cultivators gritted their teeth, panting. They pulled out medicinal pills and consumed them. With looks of excitement and anticipation, they once again stepped forward and pulled on the rope. Meng Hao used the rope's momentum to surge 300 meters forward. The tendrils fell further back. His eyes bright, his hand shot toward the wall talisman. It blazed golden, coalescing into a blurry figure. It turned and charged the black hair and pursuing spirits with shocking force. As the explosion billowed out, Meng Hao leaped forward. The pursuing spirits shrieked madly, charging once again toward him. A cold look appeared in his eyes, and he said a single word. Boom! The talisman would now serve an additional function. Another explosion ripped through the ancient cave. Borrowing the momentum of the explosion, Meng Hao surged forward. He was now only 30 meters from the cave mouth. He took hold of the red rope and pulled hard. In an instant, he shot forward 30 meters, flying out of the cave. As he shot out, 10 phantoms charged toward the exit but stopped at the cave mouth, shrieking as if unable to leave. A restrictive spell sealed their cries within the valley. The 7 men outside heard nothing. Meng Hao held onto the red rope, allowing it to pull him upward. He turned and looked back down at the cave. As he did, he heard the voice of a woman, filled with frustration and doubt. It also carried with it a billowing sense of grief which shook Meng Hao. "The Tao, what is the Tao?" The voice grew shrill as it spoke, causing Meng Hao's heart to seize with pain. He drew further and further away from the valley floor, passing through layer after layer of mist, until he neared its border. "Pull, haha, let's see what treasure comes up. Maybe it's another spirit sealing stone. Whatever it is, we definitely will not have wasted our effort this time." The 7 men pulled excitedly, their eyes burning with passion. And then Meng Hao emerged. Their mouths dropped open and they stared at what they had painstakingly pulled up. The red rope dropped from their hands. They gaped, minds reeling. They expected treasure, not Meng Hao. They couldn't believe their eyes. This. Damn it, what's going on? How can this be? That's the outsider from before. He's not dead after all. But how could it be him that we pulled up? Their minds reeled, especially the toad geezer, who had no reaction other than to gape. As for the cultivator who had lost the spirit snake, when he recognized Meng Hao, his eyes filled with rage. "It's that damned outsider," he said angrily, taking a step toward Meng Hao. He couldn't believe that he had spat up so much blood in his efforts to pull Meng Hao out of the mist. His rage billowed up. Meng Hao looked at him calmly. The man's body shook, his organs seized. His cultivation base failed. Blood drained from his face as a crushing pressure bore down, shaking him to pieces. Meng Hao's gaze held. The vast difference in their cultivation bases crushed him. A lift of Meng Hao's hand would tear him to pieces. Terror flooded him. He coughed blood, too afraid even to step back. The 6 other men felt sick. Seeing Meng Hao stand like an imposing mountain, they trembled. One gesture would end them all. "He's hovering," the toad geezer's face changed. This flight was not like riding poison beasts. This was true flight. "A Foundation establishment expert," the words hit them. 2 years ago he was 9th level Qi condensation. They'd assumed him dead. Now he towered above them. As a Foundation establishment expert he could end them at will. Pale, all 7 bowed deeply. "Greetings to the elder generation," they said, fists clasped. Dread filled them at the thought of his wrath. The man who'd lost his spirit snake trembled most, dropping to kowtow to the expressionless Meng Hao. Even as he dropped to his knees, Meng Hao lifted his hand and waved it forward. A flying sword appeared. It was an ordinary sword, but it contained the power of Meng Hao's Foundation establishment cultivation base. It shot forward, disintegrating as it did so. The shrapnel shot down toward the spirit snake cultivator. A blood-curdling shriek rang out. He was of the 9th level of Qi condensation, but blood showered out of his body, and he was killed instantly. His body toppled down into the mists. The 6 others trembled, not daring to flee. They kowtowed, unmoved by the man's death. From Meng Hao's first appearance, this man had expressed the bitterest hatred for him. If Meng Hao did not eliminate him, the other 6 men would have found it strange. That, in turn, could have given birth to other problems. Although Meng Hao had not been a part of the cultivation world for a very long time, he had experienced many things in the past 6 years. He was not the soft-hearted scholar he once had been. When killing became necessary, he did it without hesitation. Enmity had been created 2 years ago when the man had attacked him, and then had his spirit snake killed. The man was of the 9th level of Qi condensation, so it was impossible to tell whether or not he would reach Foundation establishment. Killing him now would prevent any future troubles. From the incident with Ding Xin, Meng Hao had learned that even when attacking enemies weaker than yourself, you must be quick and thorough in the kill. From the incident with Wang Tengfei, he had learned that even an opponent with a lower cultivation base could harbor resentment and pursue vengeance ruthlessly. In 6 years, Meng Hao had matured in both personality and judgment. Chapter 104. A great wind arises, the rock spreads its wings. Looking down at the trembling men, Meng Hao experienced for the first time the respect and fear granted to powerful experts. 2 years ago, they had attacked him at the 9th level of Qi condensation. Now, each trembled. "I want you to tell me everything you know about this place," said Meng Hao coolly. "If you hide anything from me—" He let his words trail off as his gaze swept over them. They trembled as they saw the remnants of the red glow emanating from his eye. The glow carried a demonic air that shrank their pupils. Branded onto their spirits, the sight terrified them utterly. They told him everything: ancient records, maps, ancestral poison recipes. Days later, Meng Hao left the valley on a green leaf transformed into light, shot toward the southern domain, respectfully sent off. The 6 cultivators relaxed. They forgot the dead man, desired no vengeance, and hoped never to see Meng Hao return. A few more days passed. It was late at night in the deep valley. There, in a region impossible to see, was the mouth of an ancient cave. Everything was calm. Within the cave was a red rope, as well as several spirits who looked like 7- or 8-year-old children, squatting there, about 2,500 meters into the cave. Occasionally, they would let out a howl or two. The rope went down into a hole that seemed endless. It stretched down into the earth deeper and deeper. Soon, a woman's head could be seen, pierced by the rope. Her face was pure white, her eyes open, gazing frustratedly at the darkness. Past the head, the hole continued to stretch down, along with the red rope. 30,000, 300,000, 1,500,000 meters down, the sea appeared. The rope sank into it, continuing without end. If someone could see that far down, 3 million meters, they would be gazing upon a pitch-black sea. The rope stretched on into the sea depths to this area. It was impossible to tell exactly how far the sea and the rope stretched. Up ahead was a stone formation that appeared to be thousands and thousands of meters in diameter. Massive stone boulders had been erected, ring after ring, layer after layer. In the very center of the stone formation was a wooden coffin, onto the surface of which was attached the red rope. The distance between this location and the mountain valley is difficult to describe. The rope is simply too long, and not completely straight, either. If someone pulled on it with incredible force, perhaps about 1,500 meters, then maybe you could measure it at approximately 3 million meters. The coffin had rested there an age. Now scraping sounded. The lid opened slowly, 3 inches upward. A blackness seeped out of the coffin, spreading out into the seawater. The name of this sea was the Milky Way. This sea existed between 2 great subcontinents of the world. As the blackness spread out into the sea, a school of 100 fish, each about the size of a palm, swam quickly through the water. The blackness enveloped them. The blackness receded. The school lay as bones, save one fish. Pitch black, 2 tentacles erupted from its body, growing to 300 meters. As it swam upward, they writhed, terrifying. It moved upward rapidly, as fast as lightning. As it raced upwards, the Milky Way sea around it began to churn and roar. Suddenly, it broke through the surface, soaring up into the night sky. The instant it left the sea, a tremor ran through its body. In the blink of an eye, its body expanded and its appearance changed. Soon it was 30 meters long, 300, 3,000, 30,000. Within the space of a few breaths, it had grown to nearly 300,000 meters in length. It was now no longer a fish, but a bird. It appeared to be an enormous rock. Death roiled from its body, ancient as if newly awakened. Its life force was weak, dim eyes seemed about to flicker out. Rebirth. The resonant voice sprang out from the rock's mouth as it flapped its wings and began flying in the direction of the southern domain. Despite its enormous speed, if it wanted to leave the Milky Way Sea and reach the southern domain, it would need to fly for more than half a year. Meanwhile, Meng Hao sped along through the sky, sitting cross-legged on the enormous green leaf. Black clouds roiled above him, and lightning crashed down all around him, along with pouring rain. However, the rain didn't touch Meng Hao. The leaf emitted a glowing shield which blocked the rainwater. Meng Hao shot through the stormy night, occasionally illuminated by the flashes of lightning. He lowered his head to look at the jade slip he held in his hand, a look of deep thoughtfulness in his eyes. According to the legends, that cave in the valley leads to the Milky Way Sea. The villagers have been watching over that area since ancient times, and every full moon, they pull on that rope. Every time they do, they get rewards of some sort. The whole thing seems a little fishy. He turned his head, and his eyes glittered as he looked out through the thunderstorm toward the location of the mountain valley. Bits and pieces of some larger story seemed to be coming together. He put the jade slip back into a bag of holding, within which were a large assortment of bottles and jars. They contained various formulas refined by Old Man Toad and the others, as well as a collection of poison pills created by their clan. They had given these gifts in tribute to Meng Hao, as well as a handful of jade slips. Most of the poisons would be deadly to someone of the qi condensation stage, but would have less of an effect on someone at foundation establishment. However, there were a few that were special. For example, one was called Delight Pill. It would turn into a mist that, when inhaled, would cause the victim to have sexual hallucinations. He glanced over the various poison pills and then retrieved another jade slip. This jade slip contained maps of the area. He noticed one area which would take about half a year to travel to that contained a teleportation portal. The teleportation portal was controlled by a clan of cultivators and was the only one in the area. Using it would allow him to teleport to the southern domain, which would cut a huge amount of time off of his journey there. After teleporting into the southern domain, he would be only about a half-month's travel from the border of the state of Eastern Emergence, one of the 9 states of the southern domain. The 9 states form the southern domain center, 9 flourishing nations, each far larger than the state of Zhao. Such population means abundant resources and powerful sects and clans. 5 great clans and 3 great sects, each exists in its respective nation. As for the 9th nation, its proximity to the western desert caused it to become a flourishing trading hub. Eventually, it came to be called the Black Lands. Meng Hao put the Jade slip away. There wasn't much information. However, it corroborated what he'd learned back in the Reliance sect. As of now, he could visualize a rough outline of the southern domain, although it wasn't very detailed. Once I get to the southern domain, I'll have to acquire a better map, then I'll understand things better. He looked up at the rain and lightning, his eyes glowing brightly. I have a lot of acquaintances in the southern domain, elder sister Su, elder brother Chen, Fatty, and Wang Tengfei. A smile appeared on his face, a smile filled with stubbornness. It's been many years, Meng Hao is coming. Several months later, in an endless strip of barren mountains, atop a tall mountain peak, a thunderous boom rang out. It was a beautiful mountain, dotted with various stockade villages. The mountain peak was connected to surrounding mountains by long iron chains, which seemed to form a huge spell formation. In the sky above, 2 people were locked in magical combat. Below, crowds of people looked up in awe. One combatant was a burly man over 30, bare-chested, a golden centipede wrapped around his right hand. His left cast an incantation. A gigantic sail appeared, rippling, shrieking. The other was Meng Hao. He used a simple flying sword, cast an incantation, and a howling flame python erupted 60 meters long. Spinning wind blades followed, amazing the spectators. A massive boom echoed out, and the 2 of them each shot backward. The burly man laughed and clasped his hands in respect toward Meng Hao. Brother Meng, your cultivation base is extraordinary. I shan truly admire you. Meng Hao lifted his hand. The flying sword returned to circle around him. He smiled and returned the salute. Brother Shan is being modest. You only attacked with 80% of your power, but I had to use all of my power to defend. I am the one to be doing the admiring. The words seemed casual, but when he heard them, the burly man's heart shook. 2 days ago, Meng Hao arrived and requested use of their teleportation portal. Unlike the previous valley, the local chiefs were all Foundation establishment cultivators. They welcomed him enthusiastically, feasting and discussing cultivation. To prove his power, he sparred with one. Brother Meng is modest. You attacked casually, not at full strength. The man's eyes gleamed. His idea, the match had grown increasingly apprehensive. Both were Foundation establishment, yet Meng Hao seemed half-strength. Somehow, Meng Hao had measured his own power. When might I be able to use your teleportation portal? Said Meng Hao, sidestepping the question. He smiled, although the smile didn't touch his eyes. He had actually not even used a third of his full strength. Oh, that's simple, you can use it today. The burly man nodded, muttering to himself. Soon after, the spell formation within the mountains activated, and Meng Hao's body disappeared. As the glow faded, the burly man surnamed Shan frowned. 2 9th-level Qi condensation men stood beside him. As Meng Hao vanished, one said, "Chief, that guy." "I don't know where he's from," the burly man replied deeply. "His magic and cultivation base are strange. He's an experienced fighter, I could tell. Alone yet at ease, he must have unique techniques, not worth provoking." When he had attempted to feel out Meng Hao, he had failed. Meng Hao kept his power sealed up tight. This caused the man's fear and suspicion to grow stronger. The teleportation portal couldn't be used by just anyone. If your power is not sufficient, it could take your life, which happened occasionally. Therefore, he let Meng Hao use the portal to ensure that no calamity befell his village. Chapter 105. Poison blossoms in the right eye. A wide plain marked the border of the state of Eastern Emergence. A teleportation spell glowed and faded. 7 or 8 Qi condensation cultivators sat cross-legged nearby. They rose and saluted as Meng Hao appeared. Posted to defend the portal, their respect deepened at sensing his Foundation establishment base. Meng Hao emerged from the portal, eyes sweeping the cultivators, then the unfamiliar sky. He marveled at the portal's range. Ignoring the cultivators, Meng Hao shot skyward. His body became a prismatic beam and disappeared. The 7 or 8 cultivators watched as he left, their veneration for him growing. I wonder if I'll ever be able to become a powerful Foundation establishment expert. Stop dreaming. Even if you did reach foundation establishment, at the very best you would have a fractured foundation. People like us can only imagine what it would be like. Only people groomed by the great sex have a chance to get a foundation establishment pill, and even amongst the great sex, the numbers who do are few. Most people go their whole lives without even touching one. Even with a foundation establishment pill, people with latent talent like ours would only have a tiny chance of succeeding. Ah, the foundation establishment stage. That is true power, the cultivators sighed. Being assigned to guard duty in this location, they rarely had a chance to see foundation establishment cultivators. Seeing Meng Hao had filled their hearts with admiration and envy. Days passed, and the entire time, Meng Hao did not use any flight-bestowing treasures, even though it forced him to waste a bit of spiritual power. He was as cautious as ever. This was the center of the southern domain, and he knew he had to be especially careful. He had offended too many people from here, the Violet Fate sect obviously, as well as eccentric Song and Wang Tengfei. Time passed, and soon he neared the state of Eastern emergence. The closer he got, the more cautious he grew. For months he'd tried daily to use the 8th demon sealing hex. Nothing worked. Everything remained a blur. 10 days after leaving the portal, Meng Hao's expression twisted mid-flight. He fell groundward pale. He ran for a nearby forest and split a large tree with his hand, leaping into the fissure. His face turned purple, his body shook. He spat the lightning flag, which transformed into protective mist. He coughed up a mouthful of blood as he attempted to take control of the poison that was flaring up within him. The flare-up lasted 3 days. Meng Hao sat rigid, his jaw clenched. Poison burned like insects tearing his insides. His eyes blazed blood red. Suddenly, a demonic face appeared in his right pupil, laughing and crying at once like a blossoming flower. Meng Hao was aware of this. More than ever, he desired to dispel the poison. Evening of the 3rd day. A vicious wolf caught the blood scent and charged toward the tree. Meng's hand shot out, seized the wolf's neck and squeezed. A cracking sound could be heard. The wolf didn't even have a chance to cry out before it died. It twitched for a moment and then went still. Meng Hao emerged pale, his eyes glittering with killing intent. Each poison flare-up strengthened the urge to kill. The demonic face in his eyes seemed to warp all his chi. Meng Hao looked down at the dead wolf he held. He flicked his hand and the body was consumed with flames. Ash drifted out from Meng Hao's hand. The fire flickered on his face. He looked much less a scholar now and much more a vicious cultivator. In the past 2 years, the poison has flared up 9 times, but this time was different. Why did a demonic face appear within my right eye? He reached up and felt his right eye. The demonic face slowly faded away. Meng Hao experimentally circulated his cultivation base. When he did, the demonic face appeared again. His body transformed into a shining beam of light as he continued on toward the state of Eastern emergence. It was a large nation, about 10 times larger than the state of Zhao, filled with cultivators and sects. The largest of the sects was the Violet Fate sect, which acted as the leader of the other sects. You could definitely say that the state of Eastern emergence was the base of operations for the Violet Fate sect. Meng Hao knew this, but had no other options. Going around the nation would involve traveling a huge distance. He wanted to get the state of Blue Clouds, where the Black Civ sect was, a location actually closer to where the state of Zhao had been, but which was on the other side of the state of Eastern emergence. The state of Eastern emergence was vast, easy to hide in, unlike the small state of Zhao, and at Foundation establishment he could protect himself far more easily. He entered. A cultivator city lies ahead. Meng Hao flew in black robes and a wide bamboo hat. Few mountains dotted the vast plains of the state of Eastern emergence. Mortal cities scattered about were connected by trade routes filled with carts. The hustle and bustle was far greater than that in the state of Zhao. As he flew through the air, other Foundation establishment cultivators flew past him, going in different directions. That was something which would be a rare sight in the state of Zhao. There were also many Qi condensation cultivators. You could say that the spiritual energy throughout the state of Eastern emergence was greater than that of some of the famous mountains within the state of Zhao. In fact, there were some places where the spiritual energy was so dense that it made Meng Hao apprehensive. Days later, a majestic city rose on the horizon. What would take mortals hours to travel, Meng Hao covered in moments. It was currently dusk, and as the sun set over the city, it looked like a gigantic coiling dragon, its head lifted up to look at the heavens. As he approached the city, he felt a pressure pushing him down from the sky. He landed on the ground and proceeded forward on foot, lifting his head up to gaze at the city. Even though he had seen cities before, this sight moved him. There were other cultivators around him, some alone, some in groups of 4 or 5. Above, the sky was completely clear. There was a restrictive spell in place overhead that prevented flight, and the only thing that could be seen was its colorful glow. It made everything seem celestial in nature. The gate was guarded by 8th-level cultivators, the walls by 9th level, nearly Foundation establishment. This is a great city of cultivators of the southern domain. As he contemplated, Meng Hao began to more fully understand the power the Violet Fate sect wielded in this great nation. Meng Hao looked ahead and noticed that as people entered the city gates, they paid a tax of spirit stones. Just as he was about to do the same, a whistling scream could be heard approaching in the air. The sound was very sudden, causing all the cultivators in the area to lift their heads. Off in the distance, a beam of light shot toward the city. Violet-colored, 30 meters wide, it screamed like a shooting star. A middle-aged man in splendid clothes flew toward the center, ignoring the restrictive spell. His pressure shocked the cultivators below. A whirlwind swept the land. A core formation, eccentric. Only people like that can ignore the city's restrictive spell and fly. Keep your voice down. That's Reverend Bai Hong of the Violet Fate sect. They say that years ago, someone from the Cloud Resemblance sect was disrespectful to him, so he slaughtered the entire sect. He's cruel and ruthless. The buzz of conversation slowly died out. Meng Hao looked off into the distance, his expression calm but his heart pounding. Lowering his head, he entered the city. Largest city of cultivators he'd ever been in before was Milky Way City in the state of Zhao. Entering this great city in the state of Eastern emergence, he felt as if his worldview had suddenly expanded. Items used in cultivation were available everywhere, and tall buildings rose up as far as the eye could see. Qi condensation and foundation establishment cultivators bustled about, and Meng Hao even caught sight of 2 core formation cultivators like the Reverend Bai Hong from moments ago. Meng Hao was the only person wearing a wide bamboo hat, which actually caused many people to turn and look at him. He hesitated a moment before ducking into a random shop. When he came out, the hat was gone. His expression was calm as he walked past several more shops and then began to walk through some snaking alleys. Suddenly, his body shot backward 30 meters and his hand shot out like lightning. It came to rest on the neck of a boy of about 15 or 16 years of age. Meng Hao lifted him up and pressed him against the wall. The boy was 6th-level Qi condensation, bony but cunning-eyed. His face twisted as Meng Hao lifted him. Slight spiritual power would reduce him to ash. "Why follow me? Explain in one sentence." Meng Hao's expression was calm as he held the trembling boy, who saw death itself in his black robes and long hair. This chapter was sponsored by Metazone, Ralph Hack, Deep Bhattacharya, Chris Sherman, Bernard O.J.R., Nemel, and Zhu Yuanyuan. Chapter 106. The Day the Resurrection Lily Blooms in 7 Colors. "Senior, I can help you find what you need," the young man blurted urgently, fear bright in his eyes. He knew one chance: explain clearly or die, city limits or not. Meng Hao gave the young man a look. He didn't say anything, but the young man was clever and picked up on Meng Hao's intention. He continued speaking. "I'm Qiu Lin of the junior generation," he said, the words pouring out, his heart pounding. "I was born here in Eastern Greatness City, so I know the place well. I noticed you when you entered the city. I can tell that it's your first time here. You need someone who knows their way around to help you find what you're looking for. I'd like to offer my services. Senior, for only 50 spirit stones, you can save yourself a lot of time. I can help you find what you need much faster." He looked nervously at Meng Hao. He wasn't lying. Everything he'd said was the truth. He'd done this before, but never met anyone with Meng Hao's deadly aura. Meng Hao looked him over coldly and loosened his grip. He frowned. Poison flare-ups strengthened his killing intent, warping his nature. Qiu Lin took in a deep breath and then said, "What is it you seek to buy, sir?" "Poison pills," replied Meng Hao coolly. "Poison pills?" Qiu Lin stared in surprise. He thought for a long moment, and then his eyes glittered, and he went on to provide a vivid description of this aspect of the city. "Senior, there are not many shops in the city that specifically sell poison pills, but poison pills are still medicinal pills, and there are lots of shops in the city that sell medicinal pills. There are 2 shops that could be considered the best. One of them, called the 10,000 Pills Pavilion, has the most variety of pills. It's very famous, and when they have auctions, even Foundation establishment cultivators will attend. There's another shop that's a bit smaller, but they conduct trade with the Western Desert, so they have a lot of imported items. They say the apothecary there used to work with Grandmaster Pill Demon of the Violet Fate sect. He was some kind of boy genius when it came to medicines. Which place would you like to go to, sir? Meng Hao chose the 10,000 Pills Pavilion. Qiu Lin led the way. His help saved considerable time. Within an hour, they reached a 7-story pavilion with a stone stele bearing its name. I can't go in, Qiu Lin said. I'll wait. Meng Hao noticed 5th and 6th level disciples about. He nodded and entered, casting spiritual sense on Qiu Lin to watch him. Now that he was of the foundation establishment stage, he was becoming much more familiar with the usages of spiritual sense. Inside, qi condensation cultivators were restricted to the 1st floor, foundation establishment to the 2nd and 3rd, core formation needed the 4th. Meng Hao walked, frowning at the pills. After a moment he left. Qiu Lin stepped forward immediately. The 2nd place, Meng Hao said, still frowning. Qiu Lin asked no questions and led him away. Evening came as they reached a remote shop that seemed ancient. This place is small and it has 3 rules, Qiu Lin told Meng Hao. The first rule is that you can't enter unless you put up a deposit of 50,000 spirit stones. The deposit is non-refundable, whether or not you buy anything. The second rule is that only one person at a time may enter. Everyone else must wait outside. Furthermore, only 20 people are allowed in each day. Once 20 people have entered, others must wait until the following day. The third rule is that once inside, random questions are not allowed. Every question asked must be accompanied with a payment of spirit stones. Meng Hao was surprised, then understanding dawned. He'd rather spend spirit stones than suffer the poison. The door was closed, plaque 18 hung on it. Meng Hao centered himself and stood quietly. Qiu Lin waited beside him. When the sun nearly set, the door creaked open. A middle-aged man emerged frowning, not looking at them, and bowed to the old man who saw him out. When he saw the middle-aged man, Meng Hao's eyes narrowed and he lowered his head. He had seen this man before. It was none other than Reverend Bai Hong, whom he had seen flying through the sky earlier in the day. The old man who stood in the shop door was of the late foundation establishment stage. For a core formation eccentric to salute him in such a manner was very unusual. Bai Hong became light and shot skyward with a whistle. The old man looked at Meng Hao. Meng Hao immediately handed over a bag holding 50,000 spirit stones. The old man nodded slightly and entered. Meng Hao followed. The plaque changed from 18 to 19. The shop wasn't very large. There were no shelves. Instead, there were 7 pill furnaces of various sizes, 2 long tables, and an oil lamp. The light was relatively dim, although to cultivators this didn't matter. They could see everything clearly. "How can I help you?" said the old man coolly, sitting cross-legged behind one of the long tables. Meng Hao produced a jade vial and pushed it across. The old man opened it, gazed closely, sniffed it, then tipped it. Blood flowed onto the table. The jade vial contained a sizable amount of blood, which Meng Hao had extracted from his body. "Interesting," said the old man, his voice low. He stared at the blood on the table. He lifted his hand and a long silver needle appeared. He dragged it through the blood and immediately the needle began to glow. Then in the blink of an eye it began to melt with rot. In an instant it had turned into bits of ash which floated out in the air. His eyes glistened. He slapped the table, blood flew up and congealed. He produced a withered seed and merged it into the globule. The blood contracted and vanished. The seed swelled, then sprouted as it floated. Meng Hao watched intently, nervous. He'd spent much to attempt this cure. The seed sprouted, forming into a long branch upon which a single leaf grew. The leaf eventually grew into a flower. As soon as the flower appeared, the old man's face went pale. Meng Hao's eyes narrowed. The petals of the flower were 3 different colors, yellow, blue, and red, interlocking with each other. The flower itself had the appearance of a demonic face that was laughing and crying at the same time. The demonic face flower floated there in the air, seemingly alive. It was extremely bizarre. "A 3-colored resurrection lily," said the old man in a hoarse voice. The name resurrection lily is based on a real plant, although I doubt its appearance in real life is anything like how it's supposed to look in ISSTH. He stared at the flower, his eyes shining. "When this poison flares up 3 times, it forms a complete cycle. After 3 cycles, the flower will bloom. After it blooms, a demonic face that seems to be both laughing and crying will appear in your right eye. It will come and go depending on your usage of your cultivation base. If you circulate your cultivation base for a long time, it will grow more clear. At this stage, the poison will not injure you, and in fact will protect you from all manner of other poisons." However, your desire to kill will grow stronger. After 3 more cycles, the flower will bloom again, and when the poison flares up, another demonic face will appear in your left eye. At this point, your desire to kill will be even stronger. You will become incredibly bloodthirsty. At this point, not only will you be immune to a vast array of poisons, you will begin to emanate a poisoned miasma. Your flesh will become incredibly tough, and you will be more resilient than the average cultivator. However, you will find that your body is also becoming more and more stiff. Your agility will be reduced, and your life force will slowly become dim. You will often be surrounded by a death aura. After this, the flower will bloom a third time, said the man, his voice filled with profundity. Your mind will be lost, your life will be gone. Your body will transform into a 3-colored resurrection lily. The person who planted the seed in you will come to pick the flower. Sometime after the transformation, you will turn into a 4-colored resurrection lily. Mortal chi condensation, foundation establishment, core formation, nascent soul, spirit severing, Tao seeking. 7 stages, 7 colors, 1 for each stage. Eventually, the resurrection lily will bloom in 7 colors. The flower descends, immortal ascension, 1,000 years. In ancient times, cultivators used this flower in order to achieve immortal ascension. The old man gazed at Meng Hao. Meng Hao shivered with fear, frowning at what he'd just heard. Fellow Taoist, please, don't joke with me. I have ordinary latent talent and no special treasures that people are pursuing. It wouldn't be worth it for an enemy to plot against me with such a rare flower. The old man looked at him with a smile, but said nothing. Meng Hao was silent for a moment, then produced another bag of holding which he placed down in front of the old man. The man nodded. Young friend, what you said is both correct and incorrect, said the old man slowly. This 3-colored resurrect flower is not complete, it's defective. It won't bloom past 3 colors. Otherwise, no one in the world would be able to dispel it for you. How can I dispel it? When the man didn't respond, Meng Hao threw over another bag of holding. Outside, stars and moon appeared. Lanterns lit the city. A woman in a long white sleeveless garment approached, incredibly beautiful, graceful, like a celestial being under moonlight. As she reached the shop and saw plaque 19, a slight smile appeared that made Qiu Lin's heart race. Meng Hao had seen her before in the Reliance sect. She'd accompanied Wang Tengfei when he left, Wang Tengfei's fiancé. Chu Yuan.